Oh man, it's not easy to sing another theme song when our theme song is playing.
When our theme song is awesome.
It's as powerful and awesome as it is.
That's
certainly
right.
better than Bill Conti's iconic theme for Rocky, the film that we are talking about today from 1976, 1 year before Star Wars. Because that's, I guess, how you rate things. It's like AD. There's before Star Wars and after Star Wars. It's actually not a bad metric in terms of understanding the industry. But yeah, Rocky, a year before Star Wars in 1976.
When was Jaws?
Jaws was, I want to say, 70. I don't know. I wish I did. 75. I'm going to take a random guess, but I think that's wrong.
75.
Yes. Why didn't I trust myself?
You should have.
I'm the Rocky of random movie trivia.
No, you're
I
not.
go the distance and then get knocked out.
You lose.
A TKO, is that what they call it?
That was a split decision in that case. So TKO, so you have a knockout. That's when you go down and you're down for 10. And you have a TKO, a technical knockout, which is when the judge calls the fight.
Is that what, spoiler, happens to Rocky at the end of Rocky? I don't actually know.
It's a split decision at the end of Rocky.
I understand that Rocky does not win, but I do not understand the mechanics of Rocky not winning. I don't know enough about boxing.
So you score points over the course of the fight, and then the judges, you have independent judges, and they're the ones tallying points or making judgments about points. And then you come to the end, if you go for the full, however many rounds the fight's supposed to last, in this case 15, you go the full 15. And then, okay, they're both still standing. Nobody was knocked out. So now it goes to a judge's decision. And sometimes it's really clear. And I'm not a big boxing guy, so I may get some of this wrong. But so you pick somebody like somebody like Floyd Mayweather.
Mm-hmm.
It's a highly technical boxer. A lot of people say Floyd Mayweather makes boxing boring because what he did is he mastered the art of scoring points and just staying out of the way and not allowing his opponents to score on him. So he just goes the distance, and then he racks up so many points that he's just sort of undisputed, unanimously, he won the fight.
Yeah, as someone whose ideas of boxing come from Rocky movies and things like this, watching Floyd, which I have done, been at somebody's house for one of those pay-per-view events, incredibly boring.
Yeah. Yeah, if your idea is Rocky, well, you're just wrong. Like at any point, a judge is actually going to call the fight's going to get called.
Right.
Well before. Like these guys that are getting beat up, like it's just dangerous. It's too dangerous. They're going to call the fight. They're going to look at him. They're going to say, this is dangerous. You're done. You can't see. You've been knocked out. You're dizzy. You're disoriented. This is dangerous. You're done. Right. It gets called way quicker than that. You don't just go and wail on each other like that. The judge will just step in to protect everybody and call the fight in favor of the person who's not getting the crap kicked out of him.
Right.
But so what Floyd Mayweather does is he just dances around. He scores points. He's very highly technical, very skilled. And then you get to the end of the fight. You've got this other guy who's just really frustrated. Like he may be a big guy. He may be a big swinger. Like he may, if he could just find a way to corner or trap Mayweather, may be able to knock him out. He just can't do it. He just keeps slipping out.
Yeah. And to me, watching something like that is akin to watching nothing. It's just a kind of boring dance between two people.
Yeah, you have to actually have some knowledge of boxing and appreciation for, the technical skill involved to really appreciate Floyd Mayweather. If you come to it without any knowledge of that, you just want to see Mike Tyson fight, right? Mike Tyson wants to kill you.
Yep.
And so Mike Tyson's going to win by trying to kill you. You go watch Mike Tyson fights, and it's a totally different animal. He's just a beast in the ring who wants to kill the person on the other side. And it's amazing to watch. It is the closest thing that you would get to in any kind of recent memory to a Rocky fight. But even there, it's going to look a lot more sterile and clean. And you're going to wonder if your mind is programmed with Rocky blows. Like your mind, you're going to look at that and think, that hits what it took or whatever. But then you just don't appreciate just how vicious and powerful a blow to the head from Mike Tyson really was.
Yeah.
Right?
I think a lot of that is, real people use defense, unlike in the Rocky movies.
Right.
But also...
Yeah, it's amazing. Like their hands are down and they just sit there and take blows to the head.
It's ridiculous.
Like, he says, what in the world?
The other thing is Hollywood sound design is just so over the top. What we
Right.
think of a punch as sounding like, if I was to walk over and punch Ben right now, it would not make that satisfying, thwacky, loud cantaloupe being hit with a sledgehammer sound that Hollywood has taught us to expect. I mean, if you've ever seen a real fight or been part of a real fight, it doesn't sound all that dramatic. I mean, there's still a horrible thud of a fist going into somebody's face that happens, but it's just not the same thing as what these movies teach us.
Right.
1976. It all started here. I don't know why I'm fixated on the year 1976. Well, this is a very 1976 movie, so I suppose we'll talk about the...
Feels very 70s.
Feels very 70s, yes. It's almost... What I would say is this movie is disguised as a 70s movie, and then by the end, it's... Actually, I wasn't. I was a happy 80s style feel-good movie, but I pretended to have a lot of grit and grime. That's not a criticism. I know that already sounds like a criticism. That's not a criticism. This movie is...
It's almost anti-70s.
It's almost anti-70s, yeah. But if your benchmark for the 70s is things like French Connection or Exorcist or like all these real gritty kind of Serpico kind of, that's when I think 70s.
The conversation, stuff that's going to end badly.
Or even The Godfather to some extent. The Godfather's much more glamorous, but it's got that same kind of, we're walking through the city and everything's kind of grainy and everybody's sweating and nobody's pretty sort of feeling. In any case, speaking of people who aren't pretty, we've got me. I'm your humble and obedient host. We've got Ben. He's the pastor. No, he's a preacher who's a teacher of Sanity. Or nope.
Cinema. There you go.
And Ben, why don't you introduce in the corner over there?
And in this corner, we have Jake Menzel, the pastor, who's a master of cinema.
The pastor is a master of cinema. And gentlemen, we are talking about one of the great pieces of cinematic iconography, a touchstone. I mean, it's right up there. It's one of the movies, 10 or 20 movies that are just like movies. This is one of them. So you got your Star Wars, you got your Singing in the Rain, you got your Wizard of Oz. I mean, I think Rocky is like that level of like you could put it on a stamp and everybody would know exactly what you're talking about. And whether he's running up those steps or whether it's just a guy in the ring, there ain't no other boxing movie that comes close. It's the template. It's the thing. It's Rocky. We're talking about it, which means we're going to have a conversation that I think is a very fun conversation to have, although it is often fruitless, which is the conversation like, why this one? What makes this more special than the other things that are like it that would seemingly do the same thing? Or is it? I don't know. We'll talk about it. I love Rocky. I think we all love Rocky. Is that fair to say?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we should talk more baggage before we get any farther. Oh, I did want to read this Time magazine quote. The very best way to enjoy Rocky is not to examine it too carefully. Better simply to relax and roll with the Walter Mitty, Cinderella, and what have you notion that the least of us still stands a chance of making it big. I'll tell you who didn't like Rocky all that much, the critics. They're like, what is this cornball 1940s plot that is telling us we can make something of our lives? What? This is the 1970s. We just can't make something of our lives. Everything's going to ruin. It's the end of civilization. You were wrong. The 2020s is the end of civilization.
There you go.
It's always the end of civilization. Everybody's like, yay, the 90s. We had Pizza Hut. Guess what? That was the end of civilization back when we were in the 90s. You people don't actually remember the 90s.
Yeah.
You ever seen the movie The Matrix? Came out in 1999. That movie is like about how civilization ended a couple of years ago, right, guys?
Yep.
Anyway, Ben, what is your baggage with Rocky, with boxing, with pugilism, with all this stuff?
I think all our listeners will know my history with boxing. No, there's no history with boxing. There's no real history with Rocky. I mean, I knew that Rocky was a thing. I remember my dad telling me some of the plots of Rocky. I think I saw the final scene of Rocky, not the boxing match, just the part where he's like, Adrian. And I never saw it. I don't know why. It's just one of those things. My dad was a big fan. My mom liked it probably. Never watched it.
You never watched any Rocky sequels?
Until this week. No.
Have you seen any Creed movies?
I saw Creed.
Okay.
I saw Creed 1. That's the only Rocky franchise movie I've watched.
Wow.
There you go.
I know.
Do you like any other fighting movies?
Yeah. We talked about Warrior.
We did talk about Warrior.
Warrior's awesome.
Warrior is awesome.
Martial arts movies became my thing.
But do you like the tournament genre of martial arts movies? Because that's not my favorite
No,
flavor of
actually,
martial arts.
no. No, I don't. I've seen crummy parts of those on TV, like Bloodsport, Jean-Claude Van Damme. I've seen TV edits of that stuff. And
Jet Li's Fearless. Remember that one?
Fearless is okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. Van Damme is terrible for all that. I think he's actually like a real able kickboxer.
Yes.
He's no fun to watch on screen. So no, I don't like the tournament style stuff.
Yeah,
I like martial arts and samurai.
Yeah, I'd rather it be a life and death kind of situation, not a I'm fighting for my country in a tournament kind of situation. That's just not as exciting for me. Mortal Kombat was never my game, nor was it my movie series. I just like those sorts
Why ever not?
I don't know.
Given the outstanding quality.
Given the outstanding quality,
the
you'd think I
series,
would
I
have
don't
made an
know.
exception. But
Yeah.
I think of all tournament movies, I like boxing movies the best, or at least I can name many boxing movies that I like.
I wish I could name more. I feel like I've seen a couple others, but I mean, I've seen Cinderella Man, but I think that's a terrible movie. I'm sorry, listener. I know people love that movie. I hate it. I know I've seen another boxing movie or two. Can't bring it to mind.
Did you ever see Mark Wahlberg?
Ben, I thought you were a huge Ron Howard fan.
Yeah.
Jake, I try to give that impression.
Right.
But
and
I've
how
been
do you explain
lying.
the posters of Russell Crowe all
I've been-
over your house?
I've been lying. I'm a Russell Crowe fan. That's how. Asteroid Commander.
Pretty easy to explain, actually.
It's pretty easy to explain. These are different people, Jake. I'm not sure if you know this, but Ron Howard and Russell Crowe, very different people.
I guess they did make at least
But they made a movie
two
together.
films. Two,
yeah.
Beautiful Mind and Cinderella Man.
Another movie that I despise. I hate that movie so much. Okay.
Insofar as it's taking a true story and mangling it beyond recognition to
Make an Oscar bait worthy drama.
put it into a phony mold. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
What's the hate?
Was that? Yeah, what's the hate?
What's the hate?
Yeah, we love it when they do that.
Ron Howard.
The Fighter with Mark Wahlberg
Never
is
saw
a
that one.
great boxing movie.
Huh. Okay.
I mean, any boxing movie that's actually about boxing, I think I probably don't like, but maybe there's not that many boxing movies that actually are about boxing.
They're all
Most of them
about
are
people.
like, this is about his personality and his... Some of the Rocky sequels I don't like because they really do sort of reduce themselves down to just... It's Rocky and it's the other guy, and maybe there's a lesson he has to learn. He was too impetuous in he thought he could take Clubber Lang. It'd be easy, but what's really sweet about a Rocky movie, as we'll get to, is the Adrian of it all and the environment. And it's not just about... The movie would be good without the boxing, and those are some of my favorite boxing movies.
What about either of you seen The Hurricane?
Never saw The Hurricane.
No, never saw it.
I never saw Ali. That I'd actually like to see because it's Michael Mann. With Will
Yeah.
Smith.
Yeah, but it's Will Smith.
My understanding is that he mans it up and really doesn't give you the Ali biopic that most people wanted, at least. I don't know. Have you seen it?
I've never seen it because I didn't think it was going to do justice either to Will Smith's talent or certainly Ali. I just think that is bad casting even. And it told me everything I wanted to know about the movie from the get-go. Like, this is Will Smith, happy story, Oscar bait movie.
Yep.
This is not the Muhammad Ali story. And I didn't want to have anything to do with it because I really liked Will Smith at the time. And I don't know. I just did not want to have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I've stayed far away from it.
Yeah, that's fair. I see about Ali and especially about The Hurricane with Denzel Washington. They just both feel like homework, and I don't like homework movies. So I'd rather go to a film to be entertained. My history with this stuff is I do like the Rocky series. I think I've seen most of them. I don't know if I've actually ever seen Rocky 2, which I'd like to because it's supposed to be
It's good.
quite good.
It's a spiritual sequel to the first one.
Right.
And
Cool.
it's just the next part of the insecure dummy off the street everyman and his romance with his wife, and they're going to get married, and it's going to be a little melodramatic. She's going to go into early labor and then into a coma or whatever, and so there's a little bit of a little more melodrama in it than the first one, but it's not It doesn't overplay it too much, I don't think. I think it's pretty tastefully done.
Yeah,
all
I mean,
things considered.
I'm okay with whatever melodrama. I want the guy that has two turtles named Cuff and Link. I want that
and
guy.
we get to see Cuff and Link again, and they're bigger, and he thinks he's going to leverage what happened with Apollo into a TV deal, or not a TV deal, but into like commercials and stuff like that, and be a folk hero. But he's too stupid to live, and he can't read the cards.
Right.
And so they're going to make fun of him, and he's going to like be in bed at night trying to read a book aloud to Adrian and stumbling over the words, and she's going to be encouraging him. And he's bought a house and a car and stuff that he can't afford, and now he's in a corner, and he wasn't going to have to fight, and now he's going to have to go and work at the meat factory, and then he's going to finally take the fight with Apollo, and then Adrian's going to hate it, and then she's going to go into a coma, and she's going to come out and tell him to win, and then he's going to double down on his training with Mickey and go into the fight and pull it off.
Sounds great.
Sounds great.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
The nice thing about wives is when they disagree with something you're doing, they go into comas.
That's right.
And then you can do what you want, and then they can come out of the comas and give you their
That's
blessing.
not what he does. He can't get into it because she's not into it. She's in the coma, so he quits.
Right. But I assume at some point she comes out of the coma and is
When
like,
she comes out of the
you just
coma,
need to go be a man. Kind of thing.
she comes out of the coma, and then she gives him permission in that like goosebump moment where she's like, just do one thing for me.
Uh-huh.
Win. And then you get that bell, dong, 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 and then the training music comes on, and then we get Rocky catching the chicken and all that stuff, and then getting in the best shape of his life, and he's going to go.
I did see a pretty funny interview with a trainer, an actual boxing trainer, who was watching the Mickey stuff and was just like, no, not at all. Nothing. Nope.
No, but Burgess Meredith actually plays a much bigger role in the second film, which is really smart.
Yeah.
Because he brings a lot of character. He just brings a lot of characters to the movie.
I actually have a problem with Burgess Meredith in this movie, but that'll be a cliffhanger for later. I'll just finish up. I'm saving Jake's baggage for last because Jake's our resident sports guy, so I'm sure his baggage is exciting. Or maybe it's just, I'm a sports guy and I like Rocky. But we'll find out. I saw Rocky 3. I think there's two movies that I was introduced to in hotel rooms on TV. One of them was James Bond and the other was Rocky, two franchises, I guess. So two bad 70s entries in those franchises. I think I saw Roger Moore's For Your Eyes Only on a television in a hotel room in between doing stuff with my family. And that was my introduction to James Bond. And I was like, James Bond is dumb. And I saw Rocky 3 on a television at a hotel room with my family. And I was like, oh, Rocky's kind of dumb. So I think I had chips on my shoulder about both those franchises. And then people were like, no, they're great. So I went and watched other entries in those franchises and realized, oh, yeah, they are pretty good. I eventually by the time I caught up with Rocky, I think I was in my late teens. I was a Cinema 11 kid and I knew everything. Like I don't know if anyone goes to Rocky not knowing Yo Adrian, not knowing the outcome of the fight.
No, they still go to the first Rocky not knowing the outcome of the fight.
Just because they think he's going to win.
They expect him to win. And even it's sort of ambiguous enough that some people come away
just think he does,
thinking that he must have won.
I think that one reason I never was interested is because I knew he wasn't going to, as a kid, I knew he wasn't going to win. Mm-hmm. That had been spoiled for me. So I was like, oh well, I don't want to watch a movie where the fighter doesn't win.
But he wins.
I mean, he does win. Yeah, it's not like
he wins,
that.
He goes 15 with Muhammad Ali.
It's not like
that's
that.
right.
That's all he wants to do.
Yeah,
and all he could
absolutely.
realistically do, or more than he could realistically do.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's uplifting. There, I said it. I made that argument. I'm deep insight into Rocky. I hate boxing. I have a chip on my shoulder about boxing. I don't actually objectively think that there's really anything wrong with it. Actually, we could talk about it. But I knew a lot of people, relatives growing up that were very passive dudes. When I think of boxing, I think of a guy who can't make anything of his life, refuses to get off the couch and love his wife and discipline his kids and all that sort of stuff. And he just gets all his sort of pent up rage about how life has treated him out by watching two fellas hit each other and bleed as a way to passively indulge whatever last urge towards masculinity I have in me. That's a common criticism of sports in general.
Yeah.
Certainly fair in some people's lives, certainly not fair to characterize all sports or all boxing that way. And that's not what I'm intending to do with this podcast. I'm just reporting on my personal history. that I bring to boxing. So I think a boxing movie always has to overcome a little bit, but they don't usually have a problem with that because basic human empathy puts you in the corner of, no pun intended, of whoever the hero of the movie is. And so you get over it pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, I think there's something about movie boxing that feels so cinematic, that feels actually a lot different than most, like we were talking about, than the boxing. It just feels like a silly movie. It doesn't actually make me think that much about the real boxing that I used to watch, which just felt kind of ugly and dowdy and just people slowly kind of dancing around and punching each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not claiming that those are the right prejudices to have, but those are the prejudices that I bring to any boxing movie. And when I eventually caught up with Rocky, though, I did love it and was surprised by how much of a love story it was and how much of a character piece it was and how little there was in the way of any. Is there even a match in between? There's the thing that opens the movie and the thing that ends the movie, and that's it.
That's
right?
it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And I think the formula for the sequels was always to have one in the middle. Just like he loses one a lot of the times. There'll be like the second act. No? Jake's shaking his head.
That's not Rocky 2, and that's not Rocky 4.
That's Rocky 3.
It's
Rocky 3.
just Rocky 3.
Okay, Rocky 3, I guess, is my Rocky template because that's the one I saw.
Uh-huh.
All right, Jake, what's your baggage?
I grew up with all the Rocky movies, and I love them. I think boxing in particular is... So I don't think that a boxing movie actually has to win on the level of boxing or character, because boxing is a metaphor, a pretty standard trope metaphor for a man's fight against himself as he looks another man in the eye across the ring. So it's just it's a typological, mythical type of a story. It's a superhero story. It's an anti-hero story. It's a hero's journey type of story. It's on the level of that. And you have to look at any type of boxing movie that way. This is about what makes a man a man. This is about what makes a hero a hero. This is a Spider-Man movie. This is an Indiana Jones movie. This is just more, in some way more grounded, but in some ways less grounded than that. But this is the classic American hero or anti-hero, the guy from the streets whose chief quality is that he can get knocked down and keep getting back up. It's just that sort of American dream of, by grit and determination alone, I can overcome my obstacles, the things that stand between me and success, and I can make it. I can do it. I don't have to win. I just have to keep getting back up again. And it's what we love about Spider-Man, or what we love about Indiana Jones, or what we love about any John Wayne type of a movie. It's what we love about Rocky. He's just a dude. He's just a dude like you who keeps getting back up. And he needs a kick in the pants, and he needs some motivation. And this is really you could say that the first Rocky movie is a rom-com wrapped in boxing packaging to make it acceptable for guys, but to also have it's actually a love story. And it is, and that's Rocky wins in the end, right? He gets the girl, and he proves to himself and to her that he can do it. And that's the win. Mm-hmm. But that's what's appealing about Rocky. I think that's why people keep coming back to boxing and fight movies for that reason. It's always a metaphor for the fight against yourself and the fight against life. Life's going to beat you down. Can you get back up? Do you have the will and the discipline and the drive to put in the work on the front end? And then when you're in the fight, can you take the blows and can you get back up on your feet? And so it's just a great big metaphor for that sort of thing. And so it doesn't have any grounding in actual boxing.
Right.
It's never been about that. So I grew up with the Rocky movies, all of them. Rocky 4 would have been my favorite as a kid, as it's the favorite of any kid, because it's just the unadulterated superhero movie of them all. And we all know what Rocky's going to do in that movie, right? We've got a real villain. Apollo Creed's not the villain. He's a villain, but he's not really.
Not really.
The villain of the first two Rocky movies are more complicated than that. And it's really Rocky against Rocky. In both cases, it's Rocky against Rocky. And that's what makes them special, and I think really special as movies. The writing's really good, and the acting's there, and the cast is kind of perfect. Mm-hmm. There's just some real pixie dust that goes into those two movies being what they are. But yes, I love them. They are just a placeholder in my mind for everything. I've wondered if Rocky shouldn't be a part of our hero's journey or superhero's journey. thing that we've been doing, which we started with Indiana Jones,
Right.
and then next comes Superman and Batman. I think Rocky fits actually pretty neatly into that mold, along with, you talk about Indiana Jones, you talk about John Wayne, you talk about Rocky. I think you have to talk about John Wayne and Indiana Jones and Spider-Man in particular, because that's just such a uniquely American type for what we love in a hero.
That's interesting.
And so yeah, I think it's just like a defining thing of my childhood, the Rocky movies. I would have probably as a kid thought the first two were kind of boring.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But they're sweet and fun. And
I think you're actually helping me put my finger on why I never gravitated to these things. Some of it was just not being a sports kid. But I think also it's like the very grounding of this particular hero's journey makes it unrelatable for me a little bit. Because I'm like, there's one thing I couldn't do, and that's box. Maybe I could get a superpower. I could fall into some nuclear waste, or somebody could give me $1 billion. Maybe I could crawl across glass if there were terrorists that I needed to save my wife from in the right moment. Those things, like a Die Hard, or while on the face of it, those things are all way more incredible and supernatural half the time. They actually have more access points.
Yeah, they give you freedom to just fantasize.
Right.
Rocky doesn't.
Yeah, Rocky's like, well, okay, even if I had all the grit and determination in the world, I always got out first in dodgeball. Like, I've already been defeated in that arena. Now you could say, Nathan, that's not true. You can make something of yourself. Go to the gym, which Jake has said. And I have. And it's been great to see. But also, I'm going to carry the baggage of getting out in dodgeball first for the rest of my life. And so I don't love...
We try to remind you every week.
Right.
Here in the
when you pelt me with balls.
So with my kids, we watch the Rocky movies, and they're gonna like go grab the jump ropes and grab the medicine balls and drop down and do some push-ups and things like that. It immediately translates to baseball, to soccer, to whatever else. They don't box. Right. But they just instant connection there for them in their mind.
That's cool.
This is where my fight is, or this is a place where I have to put in my work if I want to see results, and a place where I can't get beat up, and where, hey, if I work hard enough, maybe I can do things that nobody believes I can do.
Yeah, which is absolutely great. I think for me and for a lot of nerdy kids out there, it's more like, well, I'm going to grab my lightsaber and play make-believe, because that's all I've got. That's all I've got. But yeah, anyway, Rocky. It's interesting to me that I don't remember either saying we were going to do this movie or rejecting doing this movie before.
It's come up multiple times.
Has it?
And I don't know that I wondered if it was on our list or not.
I don't think
so.
We've talked about doing it, and we've brought it up multiple times.
I think it's been...
don't know that we've ever actually pulled the trigger on it.
I could imagine
like soft rejected.
I could imagine me soft rejecting it, just saying like, well, what are we going to say? It's Rocky. He goes the distance. Like, great. Which would have been a bad thing to do, because I think we're going to have plenty to say, and we already have. Ben, I believe you have some context for us, sir.
Yeah, about pugilism.
So just to outline the rest of the podcast, if people are wondering what we think of Rocky, 4 stars. It's great.
It's great.
Ben's going to give us some history of pugilism.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it some history of the movie.
Yeah.
How it was made. It's got one of those meta stories of Stallone was Stallone had to go the distance in order to get the movie made, and he had to be willing to sacrifice, and I shouldn't make fun of it. It actually is a good inspirational story.
Yeah.
The making of the movie.
It's pretty great.
But and then we'll talk through the flick. But first, how can we even talk about Rocky without understanding the noble art of pugilism?
I don't know how we could, but we don't have to. So, history of boxing, the origins of boxing. It's not clear exactly entirely when boxing started. Some people claim it started in Ethiopia around 6000 BC, and then it went on to pass to the ancient Egyptians, who had a tradition of boxing and fighting. You can find sculptures and things from the BCs, like say 1350 BC. You can find a relief sculpture where you see them boxing. The earliest visual evidence we have is a Sumerian relief carving from the 3rd millennium BC. There's lots of stuff like that. I guess as long as there's been men with testosterone and ego and a desire to excel physically, there's been something like boxing.
You can't actually. There's a whole world of what I think most cultures have understood is you can't actually train men for war without actually having them spar and fight each other.
Yeah.
And so having a disciplined sportification of it, you don't know how you're going to react in a situation until you've been in it. And so there's a whole world of people out there who are like, oh man, if it ever came to it, I would totally destroy somebody. You just haven't seen me unleashed. But they've never actually fought anybody.
Yeah.
And they would just get destroyed by somebody who knew how to handle themselves. And so martial arts of various kinds, particular to any individual culture, and boxing is just a martial art, have always been a part of raising boys to be men, raising boys to be able to handle themselves, raising boys to be able to fight, training them for war, so that everybody's dangerous and everybody knows how to take a punch and how to give a punch. And it's that sort of threat of violence that sort of is real.
Yeah.
In masculine relationships.
Yeah. And as we'll see, when I talk a little bit more about ancient Greece, there were different takes on the utility of boxing, and especially like contests, like Olympic Games boxing, but all to do with what you're talking about, Jake. Just a couple of other tidbits before I go there. Like there's a vase from the island of Crete from 1500 BC that shows guys squaring off with helmets and with these plates strapped to their hands.
Wow.
Pretty interesting.
So like they're hitting each other. They've got metal plates on their hands, and then they're hitting.
Think like instead of gloves, like metal plates. Yeah, I did see an image of this, and it's a picture of an old vase.
But I'm not trying to decimate Jake's head. He's wearing some kind of
He's wearing a helmet, but I think the plates probably hurt pretty bad. I don't think that they were to soften blows.
They might be to protect your hands.
Maybe, but probably they would do a lot of damage, and maybe that's what necessitated the helmets. I don't know. There's obviously boxing, right? And then there's just striking. So boxing proper, well, we will get to that.
All the ancient stuff, I'm picturing two naked guys with bare fists. Is that what we're...
What you're thinking of is Greece in particular, I think. But there's a lot of versions of this. So the Cretan version is maybe semi-naked guys, but they've got helmets on. They've got plates on their hands. You can find this stuff in Eastern cultures. Ancient India had a lot of combat sports. There's something called Musti Yuddha, which sounds like Muay Thai, to read about it, kind of kickboxing. It's the kind of stuff where, like in cheesy martial arts movies, guys train until they can break coconuts and stones with their bare hands. Well, this kind of stuff is
trees and
this kind of stuff is documented, and it's still done in like Muay Thai to harden your bones and stuff.
Absolutely,
I mean, it's real, and so if guys are going to fight like this, often you're going to kill each other. But apparently, this Musti Yuddha, which I had never heard of, there's still underground illegal matches held in India today, apparently. So, but all that is tidbats. So, ancient Greece, there were a bunch of
well, the tidbats just flew away.
I like this. This is a new thing, right? You're going to find a sound effect.
Here come the tidbats.
The tidbats. So, there were several kinds of unarmed combat in sports. So, there's wrestling, boxing, and pankration, if I'm pronouncing that right. And that was, pankration was the ancient Greek version of UFC. Anything goes. Like hit, kick, wrestle. Just no biting and gouging, interestingly. But so wrestling was considered the least dangerous and boxing the most dangerous. Because, well, there's an inscription from the 1st century BC that says, a boxer's victory is gained in blood. And man, that was true. So 688 BC is when boxing was introduced into the Greek Olympics, the 23rd Olympiad, to be exact. There were no weight categories. Rules were simple. You fight until one of you gives up, or you die, or you just can't go on. No clinching allowed. They wound light leather thongs around their hands to protect them. No gloves. But a few hundred years later, these light leather thongs had become hard leather thongs worn over the knuckles so that the leather could cut. They used padded gloves for practice, but for the real thing, they aimed to cut each other's faces up. So just to jump ahead, I'm not really going to leave ancient Greece, but I found this interesting. Ancient Rome would continue the practice of boxing, and they picked up on this idea of, I will wear things on my hands that make it all hurt worse. And turning that up to 11, they developed this glove called the cestus. It went up your whole arm, and it had metal studs or spikes embedded in the end pieces on your fists. And some of those matches were for sport, and some of them were, of course, just between gladiators.
Gladiatorial, yeah.
Gladiatorial, just so to the death. But you're talking about severe damage with this kind of glove, no matter what, sport or gladiator. Virgil describes these gloves in the Aeneid, and a commentator said this about, a commentator was comparing his poetic description, which were like, maybe Virgil, when he talks about the brutality, it's just being poetic. So he compares it with the engravings and reliefs that we found of this Kestus and people fighting with them. Quote, needless to say, the very appearance of these deadly gloves removes any skepticism about another detail Virgil gives, that they were stained with blood and spattered with brains. So he's like, Virgil wasn't really exaggerating very much. So you didn't need to wait. Anyway, back to ancient Greece, you didn't need to wait until Roman times to deform the face of your opponent. You could do it in ancient Greece. So you can find, this is bare knuckle, right? Or leather thong, whatever. You can see on vases guys punching with their thumbs out, which Jake knows the purpose of that. Or you can guess probably. Why punch with your thumbs? To put out each other's eyes. I mean, anyway, this is Greece. There's a quote from a 3rd century sophist named Philostratus about the Olympics that kind of helps put you in their world. You come to the Olympic festival itself and to the finest event in Olympia, for right here is the men's pancration. Erechthon, who has died seeking victory, is taking the crown for it. And this Olympic judge is crowning him. Let's look at Erechthon's deed before it comes to an end, for he seems to have conquered not his opponent alone, but the whole Greek nation. They shout and jump out of their seats and wave their hands and garments. Some spring into the air, others in ecstasy wrestle the man nearby. Though it is indeed a great thing that he already won twice at Olympia, what has just now happened is greater. He has won at the cost of his life and goes to the land of the blessed with the very dust of the struggle. That's like a Greek sporting. Yay! So the Greeks, man, you could tell what they thought of their athletes. Like they held them almost in a religious regard. It's interesting, though. The Romans, by contrast, held athletes in contempt. Oh, you're like an athlete, you're a gladiator, like, you're lower class. So, but Greece, why? Greek civic life, violence was not tolerated at all. There were severe penalties for assaulting someone. People were like, what? Hey, don't be violent. Like, that's a crime. But even those who were opposed to the Olympic sports of boxing, wrestling, pancration at the time, they weren't opposed because they were blood sports. They were opposed because, well, like they thought, for instance, this is a waste of time. You should be developing your brain. You should be developing a trade. Or they were opposed because this is going to give the citizenry at large an example of a useless recreation that's going to weaken people's minds. You can pull these objections from the famous Greek physician Galen, from the philosopher Aristotle. But some Greeks, so back to what Jake was saying earlier about military training, some Greeks were like, there's a military utility. Like these guys boxing, this is good for us. Greek city-states put out their own armies. They weren't like Roman legions, just standing legions. These were like, our armies will come from our citizens. If our citizens don't have some military training and this ideal of bettering yourself in fighting, they won't be as good at it. So this is good. So these are like war games. And then but then some guys express a certain ambivalence. Like, well, the training you might do to box is good. But actually competing in the games? No. Has nothing to do with being a soldier. That's no good. Don't do that. Train, but don't go compete. That's stupid. So there's
constantly, and there always has been fights about this sort of thing and the arguments, and those arguments still go on today. So people look at divisions with different types of martial arts, their street practicality. Yeah. Because everything that's sportified has to have rules that govern it, right?
That's right.
And that take the edge off of it. So even UFC, which been described earlier as no holds barred, has all kinds of rules and regulations that prevent certain things that might happen in a street fight. And then you have other people that are like, well, okay, so what we need to do is practice and train no holds barred street fighting. Okay, but then that's really ugly. So do you just practice that on dummies? Okay, but then if somebody is trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, don't you think that that's going to have an impact on an actual street fight? Well, yeah, until a gun's involved or a knife's involved. Well, don't you think? You have all these kinds of arguments about that sort of thing, just as it relates to street fighting. But then the military will use, the Israeli military trains people in Krav Maga. The American military, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is huge, depending on the branch of the military, although certain elements of Krav Maga are, like I know local law enforcement encourages Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and definitely has elements of Krav Maga. Mostly the reason that Krav is big is because it has so many hand-to-hand weapon type of scenarios. So it's gun defense and knife defense elements to it, which is why it works its way into so many different elements of things that don't see its way into the UFC ring,
right,
or whatever. But these types of arguments and disagreements are just not new. They're ancient arguments and disagreements about the relative use of the sportification of things and how useful or how far useful it is to go, even in your training in terms of sparring and that sort of thing.
Right.
To actually develop your ability to act in the field.
Right. Should you go until your face is all disfigured and your ears are cauliflowered? Well, the Greeks thought so. I mean, the Olympics, that's what they did. And the Greeks loved competition. They loved it. That was a big factor in the popularity of these games. They loved competition. They loved winning, especially, which is a distinction, actually. Like I read about, I don't remember what African tribe, but I think this practice still goes on. They have a boxing practice. Like they love it. They train for it. They do all this competition. No one remembers who the winners are the next year. They don't care. So those are actually different things. To love competition and to love winning are different, but Greeks love both. They loved individual honor and glory, which, I mean, if you read any Homer, you know that. Right. They love it. And as a bonus, all social classes could take part in these sports. So kind of some upward mobility there. Like you can be
It's a
kid off the streets.
democratized type of thing.
Right.
Which has always been part of the American view of sports.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Interesting, all the comparisons we could draw.
So much of the beauty of American sport is its ability to be a venue for rags to riches stories, right? Like,
yes,
so many rags to riches stories just on transcending your class or station on pure ability.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I.e. Rocky, i.e. other, I mean.
That's what all the movies are about, but that's but you don't have to watch a movie. You just have to turn on ESPN.
Right.
Yes.
And whatever game you're watching is going to have, depending on how big the sport is. So if it's football, you might have 5 of those stories that get told in the course of a game, right?
That's right.
About any number of players out there on the field. When this guy, the first thing he did when he got drafted was buy his mom a house and get his uncle out of poverty or whatever else type of
And if you're a social critic or a civics philosopher or whatever, it's easy to find fodder for what is incredibly problematic and difficult and weird and unfortunate in some cases about those kinds of stories and those kinds of dynamics.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And along with it, there's all kinds of, it's definitely...
You're a person who's developed one thing about yourself, and so here's millions of dollars. You haven't actually had to develop anything else about yourself.
And so then there are all the statistics of all the NFL players who have made millions of dollars and end up in poverty, right back where they started by the time it's all said and done. And all the different ways the NFL puts their rookies through classes and requires them to learn basic financial skills and money management stuff, and the ways it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The way that it is a tool for transcending their background or their class, but many of those people end up, they are committed to developing their whole selves. So they develop their reading and their studying, and they're developing business sense, and they're building the right relationships and surrounding themselves with the right people. And it's just all kinds of factors that go in, and stories about how it all works and if it works. And
right.
Yeah. Well, to make a long story short, as Christianity rose and the Roman Empire declined, boxing as entertainment declined too. It was kind of knocked out of the ring, but it still continued to be a thing in parts of Italy. Although it doesn't really resurface as a big thing until you get centuries later, like a long time later. So we come to London, 1681, when the first formal boxing bout was recorded. And it's sometime around here that the word boxing is first used to describe this thing. This is bare knuckle boxing or prize fighting. It's brutal, sometimes ends in the death of the boxer, though that's not the goal. This is not a gladiator match.
I'm picturing Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes.
Dude, you absolutely should.
Thing.
That's right. And you could do all kinds of things. You could gouge eyes, you could bite, headbutt, choke, you could throw. There's a manual about boxing from the time that instructs readers in doing these very things to win matches. So it's almost closer.
Until you get to Marcus of Queensberry.
Yeah, I'm coming to him. Yeah, I'm coming to him. So it's almost closer, like when it starts here in London, to the pancration of ancient Greece in its way. And it's illegal, but it's very popular. Prize fighter named James Figg becomes a celebrity. For 15 years, he's acclaimed champion of England, even though boxing is illegal. People call him the champion of England. 6 feet tall, 185 pounds. He's an expert at wrestling, swordplay, fighting with cudgels. Said to have lost only one match because he was sick. As of 1954, he's part of Ring Magazine's Boxing Hall of Fame. So as boxing it's becoming more popular / notorious. Boxers start to introduce regulations so to make it less likely that boxers would die and just make the sport generally more socially acceptable. So James Figg's student, it's a famous prize fighter named Jack Broughton, I think that's how you pronounce it, came up with the Broughton rules in 1743. So this gives you things like, hey, you can drop to one knee in order to end the round, and that gives you 30-second break till the start of the next round. Of course, if you did that, you were a sissy. So no one wanted to do that, but whatever. I mean, Broughton also promoted a kind of a soft glove called a muffler, and his rules kind of served to take away wrestling-style techniques. Focus more on fists. London prize ring rules in 1838 updated Broughton's rules. They get us a little closer to modern boxing. They were like, none of that biting, no gouging, no kicking a guy while he's down. And hey, if you do have spikes sticking out of your boots, they can only be 3/8 of an inch at most. What are we, barbarians? So just like ancient Greece, there's still no limit on rounds. You just go until you're done. And as boxing goes along, it slowly begins to attract the interest of the British upper class. I mean, it's still pretty low class. And it's big money and it's popular. You want the upper class interested if you can. And it becomes more or less the British national sport. Still illegal. And it doesn't cross the Atlantic to America that much at this point. And plus, more than likely, a decent boxer in America is going to be an immigrant from Ireland, someone who brought a British love of boxing with him. And then what Jake mentioned, in 1867, the famous Marquis of Queensberry rules emerge to guide boxing matches, make them just more respectable. And these rules are sponsored by, you'll never guess, the Marquis of Queensberry.
I was going to go Earl of Sandwich.
You were going to be wrong. He was a nobleman named John Douglas. He liked watching boxing. He was this outspoken atheist, misanthrope, known for being a nasty and unpleasant fellow, greatly disliked by high society. And by the way, his son Alfred was the lover of Oscar Wilde, which was a scandal that enraged the Marquis and
so he was the persecutor of
He
Oscar
destroyed Wilde through a court case that ruined his health, reputation, put him in prison. Putting him in prison ruined his health, led to his eventual death. So that's the Marquis of Queensberry.
Although to be fair, I believe Wilde was the one that chose to see that court case through to its bitter end.
Wilde sued the Marquis for libel, I think it was, and then
that's when he actually got
when he got his butt handed to him. Yep. And so the Marquis, the right honorable patron of the sweet science of bruising, as boxing has been nicknamed.
The sweet science of bruising.
The sweet science of bruising. Yes. And these rules, his rules that he sponsored, did make it less brutal. No more shoe spikes, period. Rounds are 3 minutes each. You always have to use gloves. If they break during the match, you have to replace them. If a guy is down for 10 seconds, he's KO'd. He loses. So that's pretty modern. And a lot of old school boxers were like, these rules are for sissies. But they caught on anyhow. And then boxing started to lose ground. This is like the mid-late 1800s. Christian church has always opposed boxing, and it's coming into a period of greater influence in England. And boxing, like I keep saying, it was still illegal anyway. And it's associated with drinking and gambling, which is shocking. I don't get it. And very often the spectators of boxing matches will have giant brawls based on the outcome of the match. So boxing is just like this social, it's just awful. It's like a social sewer.
I'm picturing some prostitutes and some venereal disease.
I don't know why you'd picture that.
I don't know. I often am.
So, and at the same time, boxing starts to become really popular in America. A big part of that was the famous boxer, John Sullivan. You might have heard his name. Irish born, of course. So he becomes a heavyweight champ, famous guy, won't go into his story. And eventually in America, various states are like, this boxing has a lot of money-making value. Boxing has a lot of hero-making value. And state by state, they begin to legalize it. New York was the first in 1896. And then by the time of World War I, boxing is being used as a training tool for the war. And so like ancient Greece, we thought, hey, maybe this helps us train our guys for war. Maybe it's good for men in our society. So the state starts regulating it, giving it greater social acceptability. I couldn't find the date when it was legalized in England. Clearly it was. I'm assuming a similar kind of thing happened. And that's what I've got. We won't go into modern boxing and famous guys, Ali and Tyson and whoever.
Cool. I mean, is there anything else? Is there anything you want to add, Jake, or anything about what those guys did? Or they obviously brought commercial respectability and...
No, I don't think so. It's a fun history.
Yeah.
It's fun to read about. Pretty interesting. I mean, you do wonder, boxing as we have it now is like semi-Christianized. It's like, it's not going to be like ancient Greece where it's a virtue to die.
Right.
Right.
if you can win. It's like, no, that's bad. And I was thinking about my own associations with boxing. Like, on the one hand, I think of it in terms of it builds character, it builds skill, it's honorable. And on the other hand, I think of it like it's distasteful. It's a blood sport. I found I had both of those in my brain.
Yeah.
And watching Rocky, which I really enjoyed, I definitely had some ambivalence. I mean, I watch a lot of martial arts movies where guys kill each other.
Mm-hmm.
But boxing is a national sport.
Well, maybe I should just go ahead and give my full baggage instead of giving half of my baggage, because half of my baggage was maybe not as helpful as my full baggage. So my dad comes from Bridgeport, Connecticut, which is a famously, like Philadelphia is portrayed in this movie, kind of town, just corrupt, nasty, full of gangsters. My dad described his childhood as being very similar to the character in Goodfellas who looks out the window and sees these gangsters having a better life while he's taking beatings from his dad and stuff like that, and eventually just decides to... Or Good Will Hunting would actually be another touchstone for my dad's childhood, where Matt Damon and his pals are just driving around drinking, seeing a guy from the other side of town, from the wrong side of town, jumping out of their car, beating the snot out of him, and then jumping back into their car, that sort of thing. And so my dad had a love-hate relationship with boxing, just like he had a love-hate relationship with violence in general. He'd seen a lot of violence on the streets, a whole lot of it, and sort of thug, gangster violence, and he hated all that stuff. He couldn't watch even kind of what we would think of as innocuous movies, where if there was too much punching in a movie, my dad would be out on it. He didn't like to see a fist connect with somebody's face and blood come out of their nose or something, even if it was like an Indiana Jones or something like that. Like that sort of thing bothered him because he'd just seen too much of it in real life. But then he really liked boxing. He loved to watch boxing. And it was just something that I always had to sort of reckon with. I think I looked down on it maybe wrongly. I mean, it just felt like one of those weird hypocritical things, like we're not allowed to watch violent movies, but we're always watching. There's always boxing on in our house. And maybe there was some of that. But I think if my dad was here, I'd be interested to hear what account he would give of himself. I think what he might say is exactly what you've kind of been saying, is that this is actually a way to channel this stuff. It's every man's got it. We could pretend it doesn't exist, or we could find ways of controlling it, channeling it. And I think my dad would be actually more on the side, though, of Ben saying, it's blood. Like, I think where my dad would ultimately land is it's all bad. It's all sin nature. There's nothing, maybe it's necessary that we find a way of dealing with it. But what we're always doing is dealing with a necessary evil. Violence in and of itself, warfare, men making war, all this stuff. Necessary evil, but evil. My dad was a pacifist. My dad was an old hippie. My dad was at Woodstock. I mean, my dad just is of that generation. So boxing was a way for him to process all of this stuff. And my dad's going on 80 years old. We don't talk much. I don't really understand exactly where he was at with all that stuff. I just know he had a abhorrence of bloodletting and a fixation on bloodletting. And it seemed like a weird contradiction, but since then I've realized that's a type. Those people are out there. And I think what I'm hearing that Jake would say is we're not talking necessary evil here. We're talking, why don't I just, instead of speculating with Jake, the man's right here.
So are we talking about these types of movies? Or are we talking about boxing and martial arts in general?
I think we're talking about all of it. I think my dad would have seen all of it as
one thing.
I think he would have seen all violence as necessary evil. Like when we fight a war, There's no such thing as a war that's not evil. Maybe sometimes Hitler's just got to be taken out. Maybe boxing is a way to channel some of these aggressions in a way that kind of is semi-helpful for society. Maybe, like, my dad wouldn't say we need to just get rid of all this stuff. But, I mean, I don't really know what he would say. I just know that, practically speaking, he loved to watch boxing. But it was all, we have to feel guilty about it. Even boxing, like, it's something that we should feel sort of bad about, even if we consider it to be a necessary sort of thing. Just like,
I mean,
war.
these are big sort of cosmological questions,
exactly.
right? Like, is warfare a part of a function of the fall, or is warfare something Adam should have engaged in to prevent the fall?
Mhm.
Right? It's a big cosmological sort of question. Was Adam responsible for defeating the serpent before anything ever happened?
Mhm.
Should Adam have crushed the serpent's head in the garden? But I don't think that if we look through Scripture, God trains men's hands for war.
Yeah. I agree.
And Abraham was a warrior, and David was a warrior, and those things are celebrated without any apparent need to feel bad about that.
I'll be a little bit of devil's advocating, and I'll say, well, sure, Jake. And David was a man after God's own heart, but also David did not get the privilege of building the temple because his hands had shed much blood.
Yeah,
God gave that privilege to his son, whose hands didn't shed blood.
Yeah, but also God wanted him to shed the blood.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's certain consequences attached.
That story is a fascinating story.
Yeah, there are consequences. Yeah, but that doesn't contradict the fact that God trains his hands for war. God commands him to go slaughter people.
And he gets into
And he
his biggest
does.
trouble when he's not out
Doing
it.
his job.
When he's not out doing his job,
And the
slaughtering
Bible
people.
goes out of its way to frame it that way.
Yep.
And God regularly condemns the people for not slaughtering the women and the children of his enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't, like, it was not righteous that Saul allowed even the sheep or the goats to survive when he raised the cities. It was unrighteous of Saul.
Yeah.
To have, and so, yeah, there's something horrible about it all. But that, just because there's something horrible about it, doesn't mean that there's anything about it that David or Saul should feel guilty about. It just means that the shedding of blood is an awful thing.
Right.
Well, it's
Okay.
interesting that you come from a police family.
I do,
My
yeah.
brother was a Marine and then a police officer and a police detective. He's no longer in that field, but he was in that field for a long time. And one thing that I learned to really resent on his behalf is this whole liberal bent. Is kind of the Saving Private Ryan thing. We are going to make a whole movie praising these guys, but also it's going to be like, wasn't it awful? And there's no glory in war, and there's no heroes in war. And there's heroes, like, of course, Tom Hanks is a hero, but man, the fact that he had to do this. And I just hate that. Like, the idea that my brother has to go to Afghanistan, he has to be on the streets of the town that he was in, he has to do these horrible things, and then he's expected to bear the burden of feeling bad about it. Like,
And can't possibly feel bad enough about it to satisfy anybody.
I'm glad you interrupted me before I said a bad word. Like, take a long walk in the sticks. How dare you? And then they despise. Like, there's a culture of camaraderie, of joy, and it can become sick. I mean, my brother told me about the Marines who came back with brains on their boots, and it was like funny, and they were cool, and wasn't it great that they had indulged their bloodlust by killing women, children, whatever. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but not much. The people that were just wicked, psychotic, and went into these fields because they wanted to indulge their bloodlust. My brother is like, yeah, those people exist and they're bad and you have to stay away from them. And it's very easy to get swept up in that as a way of dealing with your own conflicted feelings about these things. But that being said, there is a joy in battle. There is a camaraderie. There are jokes. And the fact that we would want to take that away from our young men, that they're not allowed to, that not only are we requiring this difficult thing of them, but they're supposed to be mopey about it in order to prove some kind of point for all the rest of us. It's like, take a long walk.
All right.
Yeah, and that's...
I'm not arguing against you. I think
No.
you press on things that should be pressed on when you bring up the David story. And
Sure.
David was celebrated, and rightly celebrated, for killing his 10,000s. And there's something awful about it. But we don't ever see David in the psalm. Like, we have all these psalms of David wrestling with all of his demons, all of his sins, all of his difficulties, all of his anxieties. He's never bothered in the Psalms about carrying some kind of guilt for obliterating God, his enemies, or the enemies of God.
Yeah.
He's troubled by the existence of his enemies, and he prays that God would strengthen his hands to go destroy them.
Remarkably specific violent scenarios that could befall them and their children.
Yeah,
that's right.
And he prays that God would, he prays that God would dash the heads of their little ones against the rocks without any pangs of conscience. Right?
I mean, I think where I would agree with the point that you're representing, Ben, or move in that direction is it is easy to fall into bloodlust. It is. There's a reason maybe a guy retires from being your state executioner after doing it for 10 years. There's a reason my brother's not in that field anymore. And some of it was just, he wanted different opportunities, whatever. There were things that were harder for him to compartmentalize and things that were easier for him to compartmentalize. And
that's true.
Right.
And that's not to make light of that or to, but
I praise him for doing it. I'm also glad he doesn't have to do some of that anymore. And I think it did take a toll on his psyche and on his soul. And
it takes a toll on lots of those guys. But some of that is the schizophrenic nature that our culture approaches it with and tells them they have to approach it with. And go out, protect, serve, and defend us, and then we will punish you for it. That's really hard for men to bear up under. And there used to be part of, and this is again why I think boxing actually as a sport, or at least as a type, is really, even if you don't like the sportification of it, just taking it on mythological terms, on typological terms, what you have are two men looking each other in the eye with dignity and respect for each other, and who come away from the fight with a sense of respect for each other, that they've looked into their own soul and they've looked into the soul of another man. And so there used to be, and you can read about this sort of thing, right? There are two basic ways that you approach warfare, and the fact that you are killing other men made in the image of God. And one is you follow an honor code that shows some level of dignity and respect for the life that you're taking, right? In service of a higher cause. And so there's an elevation actually of what happens on the battlefield. And it's why you would have this sort of like the Brits were scandalized by American guerrilla warfare because it was dishonorable. Because what you did was you lined up, you looked each other in the eye, and you fired. And the idea that you would come from behind was scandalous. But it was so much a part of this idea of we face each other man to man with dignity and respect, and God determines the outcome, was like ingrained in certain aspects of how people talked about or wrote about this. Or now everything's different on the actual battlefield. We all understand that. But the alternative is to dehumanize your enemy and to make him into a nothing, into a cockroach or a rat, to be exterminated or destroyed. As we have degenerated in our view of humanity, and as everything is less about good and evil and more about us versus them, we've lost, I think, part of our ability to see war with any kind of actual dignity, because nothing is good and evil, nothing is black and white, and it's all us and them, and therefore, so it's all othering, and so it's all dehumanizing, and so in that sense, it is all something that you feel icky about. And a lot of these guys, these soldiers that go over, they've been sold this idea that they're fighting for freedom and they're fighting to protect their families and all sorts of things. And then they get disillusioned. They wonder what it is they were actually fighting for in the first place, and who was getting paid and who was profiting while their brothers got blown up by it's all messy. But the beauty of a combat sport, like any sport, especially when it's for young men and for training, is that it encapsulates all of those elements of looking our opponent in the eye. And it's like, okay, there are rules, there is honor, there's dignity, there's me versus you, there's the me versus you of it all, but there's also the me versus me of it all. And it's all right there. And so any type of blood sport or any type of combat sport can have all of those elements. Just like I said, Mike Tyson wasn't engaged in any kind of honor fighting.
Mhm.
And he would say that now. He would say, and there's a lot of really wonderful Mike Tyson quotes about fighting and about the art of fighting and about, there's a lot of wisdom in that man, actually. And people make fun of him and say that he's stupid, but I think the boxing ring taught him a lot of life wisdom that a lot of people could stand to benefit from. But a young Mike Tyson was in the ring to just kill his opponent. He was in there to just destroy somebody. And that's certainly present. And that is one of the things, if you're going to watch boxing or UFC, that you have to check yourself on. Like, oh no, this is boring. Oh, what you want to see is a gladiator fight. That's not
right.
There's something wrong with that too.
Well, the process that Ben just described, if you want to call it the Christianizing of, what do you call it? The science of bruising.
The sweet science of bruising.
If you want to call it, what we actually did, I think, is with both warfare and play warfare, is we actually designed systems to weed the psychopaths out. Because yes, any kind of system that, of course, the army is going to attract people who just want to watch someone's head explode and know that they pulled the trigger that made that happen.
Yep.
Of
and
course,
they can get away with it.
And they could get away with it. And if it's a brown person or a person with different skin color than them, so much the better. Easier to get your jollies from making their head explode. And of course, boxing is going to attract somebody who just wants to. I think those things, both at their best, actually weren't designed for those people, though. And so you have all the Vietnam stories of, well, we all just ended up, those were the people that succeeded. Well, okay, that's because something was wrong with Vietnam. That's because something was wrong with us even being there. You have a much bigger problem there. It's not just actually this whole sort of Colonel Kurtz thing of, we all just need to be Mike Tyson or we can't make our way in the ring. We all just need to be willing to rip our opponents' babies out of their wombs or we're not. I mean, I think there's a way to talk about a man doing what it takes, standing up, being willing to not give an inch. And also, there are also, well, we've talked about this before, and we've talked about it in terms of Michael Jordan, a man who won by simply unleashing the beast within himself. And it's amazing what he did. But he's also a sad shell of a guy with his little cigar and his bourbon or whatever his drink of choice is. Well, have we talked enough about the history and philosophy of pugilism? Do people have enough there that they can finally begin to understand our discussion of the film Rocky? What do you guys think?
I think so. I think it is worth saying that there's a case to be made that, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this at this point, but we were just talking off mic about it.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that there's a case to be made that certain of these sports, like boxing, like football, are actually intrinsically immoral at this point. Maybe they weren't always this way, but the more that we know about the permanent damage that is often done in the name of entertainment.
Yeah.
That's very different than, it's just a different conversation.
Yeah. I mean, there is something Hunger Games-y about a bunch of wealthy people sweeping up the poorest of the poor and saying, hey, permanently damage your body for lots of money. If you're really, really good at it, then lots of money.
Yeah. Be crippled in your 50s and 60s, die young. Be crippled in your 40s and 50s, have permanent brain damage, die young. But that'll be so much better because your 20s and 30s, you'll be ultra rich and famous.
Yep. That is an argument we could have. And I realize there's nuance in both directions we could bring to it, but worth saying.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk about the making of the film Rocky, that was all of your pugilistic
That's right, man.
expertise.
That's it.
Excellent. So the story of Rocky is one of the most famous Hollywood inspirational stories in and of itself, even apart from the movie being a Hollywood inspirational story. Sylvester Stallone was a young, hungry, down on his luck actor who had been in some kind of indie dramas that had done okay. He was the bad guy in some exploitation films like Death Race 2000, if people know that one, where you get points by hitting pedestrians. Sly Stallone is the villain in that film, in that work of cinematic art. But he has not made a name for himself. When our story begins in 1975, he's young, he's hungry, he's running out of options, he's getting older. Whatever will he do? Well, what he did is he went and saw Muhammad Ali fight Chuck Werner. And just in case some person from under a rock is talking, is what can you say, Muhammad Ali, Jake?
The greatest, arguably the greatest boxer of all time.
Yes, and a outsized personality.
Certainly, yeah, the most famous, definitely who Apollo Creed is based on.
Right. Not a super flattering portrait of Muhammad Ali in this first movie, at least. The character of Apollo grows and changes through the series. But if this movie had never had any sequels, I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, part of Ali's strategy was to just use a lot of outside the ring talk to draw attention to himself, make his fights big, and increase the prize size of them. And he was really good at that sort of thing and making himself the bad guy in the public image. So people would come and hope to see him get destroyed, and then he'd go and destroy his opponents. Right.
A savvy manipulator of his public image, a savvy manipulator of race relations, you could say. I mean, he was all of that.
All kinds of it.
Fascinating figure. But in any case, Ali actually did pull a stunt very similar to what Apollo Creed pulls in this movie, which when I watch Rocky, I just think it feels so fantastical. But it's not. Sometimes real life actually is as strange as the inspirational movies that we make about it. So Muhammad Ali gives a random dude a chance. His name is not Chuck Werner. I had a typo in my notes here. His name was Chuck Wepner. And he's known as the Bayan Bleeder. He comes from New Jersey, and he's just this dude, this second-rate kind of Rocky-esque dude, wasn't famous for anything. But Ali's going to give him a shot, and nobody expects it to go longer than 3 rounds at the most. But famously, it goes on. And in the 9th, Wepner actually knocked Ali down. And Ali says it was because he was standing on his foot or something like that. Like Ali was never going to just give it to him because that's not Ali's style at all. But Ali broke Wepner's nose, opened up his eyes, similar to what happens to Rocky. But Wepner just keeps going and going and going, lasts 15 rounds, and then gets a technical knockout, which is again what?
Don't want to be sure I get it right.
Is a technical knockout with 19 seconds left in round 15.
I know there's a movie based on this guy I haven't seen.
Right, and the movie was cast as the true story that Rocky was based. It was very Rocky,
right.
Rocky bait.
Yeah.
A TKO, a technical knockout's when the referee stops the fight. Right. So he just jumps into the middle and says a fighter cannot safely continue because this fighter cannot safely continue. He loses.
Right.
And so it's a technical knockout. It's just he stops in for the safety of the boxer who's getting pummeled and says, this is over. This is done. And the referee has the ability to make that call at any point in any fight. People argue about if certain refs are paid off to call a fight at the first opportunity.
Right.
You know, if they jump in too soon and too late. Often when a ref does this, it'll be debated. And usually you'll have boxers and trainers like saying like, all you guys who think that this was called early don't know what you're talking about. You don't know how dangerous the situation actually was. But that's what a TKO is.
Right. So this is slightly different than what happens in Rocky because Rocky actually does make it all the way through, as we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast 9 hours ago. And then the judges just decided against him, basically. He hasn't scored as many points. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yep.
But it's actually pretty close in Rocky. Is it somewhat close? Do they say?
Yeah. So you hear the ringmaster say it was a split decision.
That's right.
And then when you pick up, Rocky 2 actually begins with you watching the final round of that fight. And then it keeps going after that. So you have them clinching and Apollo saying, ain't going to be a rematch. And Rocky saying, don't want one. And then they end up at the hospital later. And Apollo's already running his mouth about how he needs a rematch because people are saying Rocky actually won the fight. It was fixed. Apollo had paid off the judges or whatever. Like he couldn't afford to lose no matter what happened. And so Apollo's sort of like dogged throughout all of Rocky 2 with these think pieces in the paper. We always see him. He's like reading letters from people or reading think pieces. And he's just like really angry that people think not only did Rocky go the distance, but there are people out there with the audacity to say that he didn't win that fight. And he doesn't think he won that fight. He won, but he didn't win.
Right.
Right. It was a big loss for Apollo Creed that it went the full distance in the first place, and that he didn't, and that there's any question whatsoever.
Right.
And so he's like trying to find ways to get Rocky to fight, to increase the purse, to try to bully and shame Rocky into fighting, whatever it takes.
Right.
So he can clear his name.
So there we're already getting into a little bit of fantasy because, of course, Wepner didn't do quite as well against Ali as Rocky does against Creed. And of course, Ali wasn't going to let himself be talked into a rematch or anything like that. But anyway, Sylvester Stallone is there for this thing, this freak occurrence.
But by the way, apparently, so Wikipedia tells me that there's photographic evidence that Wepner did step on Ali's foot.
Well, there you go.
And anyway, I haven't looked into this. This is just a Wikipedia claim. But.
You gotta sting like a butterfly? No.
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Yeah, you don't want to float you don't want to sting like a butterfly. Like a bee float like a bee. I guess they both float. All right. So Stallone is this struggling actor and writer, and he's like, yes, this is the story. This is my story, actually, because I'm this struggling guy who wants to go the distance, but I can't write. And so it would be very easy for me to write a screenplay about a young, struggling guy who wants to break into the movies. But Stallone is savvy enough to know that nobody's going to empathize with that story. I mean, Stallone has said in an interview since then, like, Rocky is my story, but I made it boxing instead of screenwriting and acting because people care about boxing and it's got the typology, like Jake was saying. Like, nobody's going to be like, oh, yes, he's got to become a screenwriter, you know.
In order to be an actor, he's got to write the movie.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can tell Hollywood stories. But in any way, I think this is really savvy. I think people misunderstand the old adage, write what you know. And they think, well, okay, Nathan podcasts, so he can only write stories about podcasting. That's not what that adage properly understood means. What it means is I can write about being a wizard, but when I write about being a wizard, I need to take my understanding of relationships, of dynamics, of things that I've experienced. I have to pour myself into it.
Your own struggles, your own background, your own experience, your own observations of other people's struggles and successes. And
in doing so, I can lend authenticity to a story about a wizard or a fisherman or whatever I want. It's not that I have to understand each and every field perfectly, but that is exactly what Stallone does so brilliantly in the screenplay for Rocky. And never for people, Stallone, monosyllabic Rambo actor, people don't realize he writes these things. He wrote the Rambos, he wrote the Rockies. He's a good writer. I think he gets lazy at a certain point in his career. We can talk about the middle half and we talk about where Stallone's career goes from here, but he is a good writer. And the things that people tend to remember, even from the Rambo series, are these monologues about Vietnam and stuff that Rambo gives. And they're quite good. Stallone is he's a good writer. It's just, especially for himself.
And he's a good writer, not just people think of, I just think that there's so much that are perfect about the first two Rocky movies in terms of blending comedy and drama and
not pushing into bathos or anything, but just kind of keeping it chill.
Yeah, just like very tastefully done, very smart, very clever. Rocky 2 is a little bit, everything's slightly more amped up, but still very restrained and intelligent with a lot of elbow grease in it. It got a lot more laughs out of, like, my wife, just like audible laughs than the first one. But a lot of just sweet cuteness, and it's really smart.
Yeah, he really knows how to write the love stuff. And unfortunately, at a certain point, he starts writing to his own mythological image, to the idea of Stallone instead of the idea of who this charming character Rocky is. And that's too bad. And the same thing happened with the Rambo series. You just see you have a character, a flesh and blood character who's interesting and three-dimensional and also a super warrior. And then at a certain point, Stallone just becomes famous as the grunting muscle man figure of machismo in the 80s, and he kind of plays to that. And it's as much as we all love Rocky IV and the kind of the anti-Russia, the cheeseball 80s machismo of it all, there's a world where we actually get a great series of movies about Rocky Balboa, this guy.
The guy who can barely read, the guy who feels stupid, the guy who, when he takes his wife somewhere to propose to her, ends up taking her to a zoo.
I have seen that scene, and that's a very charming little
It's
love
incredibly
scene.
charming. incredibly sweet and really interesting even as a writing choice, given the setup for that in the first movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Where the dude's like, you should take her to the zoo. I hear retards love the zoo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then you get like, even, okay, it's the tiger. And the tiger is sort of thematic, symbolic thing
Right.
for Rocky throughout all of his movies. And so it's just,
Yeah, he's good.
it's a lot of really smart stuff.
When the first Rocky movie came out, Roger Ebert said, "We found our new Marlon Brando." And it's just so silly. Roger Ebert actually revised his review. And now if you read that review, if you look it up on the internet or you find it in one of his later collections of essays, it will say something like, yes, in 1976, I really did think we found our new Brando. Like he acknowledges, okay, I guess he wasn't our new Brando. But there's a world where he plausibly is, and he always plausibly was.
Think so.
He's a great actor, and he's a great writer, at least for himself. And Rambo and Rocky are actually, in their conception and in their original couple films, very different characters. Rocky is not the monosyllabic kind of Schwarzenegger-ish guy that we think of when we think of Stallone. When
Right.
what's his face? When Weird Al in UHF, the parody movie, when he does a Rambo parody and he's got the muscle suit and he's just grunting and shooting guys and blowing
Spitting
up people,
bullets out of
and
his mouth.
spitting bullets. Like that's what we think of when someone says Stallone. That's the association that we have with it. But neither Rocky nor Rambo are actually like that in their first films. Anyway, the story is that he wrote this script in 3 days. Originally, it was much darker. Mickey was a horrible racist. And at the end, Rocky throws the fight after he figures out he doesn't want to be a part of this corrupt money. So it's much more sort of self-aggrandizing. Like he could have beat Apollo, but he just decided like
More 70s.
Yeah, more 70s.
All
Stallone
round.
writes a 70s movie, but he has the good sense to not end up with a 70s movie. And unlike many cases that we talk about, I don't think it's because some ultimately wise producers said, hey, let's just do the audience. I think it's because everybody just agreed. What we actually have here is call it cornball if you will, but we have an inspirational story. And
That's the movie.
that's the movie. And so Stallone has done this film with Henry Winkler, the Fonz from Happy Days. Hey, that guy, everybody remember the Fonz?
Yep.
From
Fonsley.
Fonsley? Yeah, I don't remember that fondly. I think the whole thing was
I
stupid.
don't either.
But Winkler manages to sell
Ron Howard had to be made by something more than the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah,
guys.
exactly. Our real Cinderella man had to work his way in the dust heap of... Anyway, Winkler sells the script for Stallone's a nobody. He's got this script that's pretty good. Winkler is his friend. Winkler sells the script on his behalf to ABC, the television network. And the ABC goons are like, all right, we'll make a TV movie out of this. This feels like some cornball TV material. So we're going to do it. We're going to rewrite it. And we're going to get somebody else to star in it. And Winkler immediately regrets reaching out on behalf of his friend. He's just like, you guys are going to rewrite that. The only thing that makes this script interesting is the specificity, the cuff and link of it all, like the love story. Like you can't, if all you bought was the concept of a boxer triumphing, then you didn't really buy anything. Like you're buying a world, you're buying a character, and you're idiots and this happens in Hollywood all the time where somebody writes something original and specific to them and from the heart and from experience. And then they're like, a story about a cop beating a robber? Great. We'll pay you $1 million.
We'll make $100 billion.
Yeah, and it's so frustrating.
And then they do.
They own this script, though. They could do whatever they want with it. They have all the power. Stallone doesn't have anything on them. But Winkler goes to bat for him and basically uses his capital as the Fonz. Like, hey, I'm the biggest thing on TV. I have literally not jumped the shark yet. And I am so powerful, you must do what I say if you want Fonzie in your Happy Days show, which both of those things were huge. And so give back my friend his script. And so they do, and disaster is averted. Then Stallone goes to a couple producers. He shops it around town. Nobody's interested in, the classic story. George Lucas is probably shopping Star Wars around town at the exact same time, and nobody's interested. But he finds these producers named Irvin Winkler, no relation to Henry, and Robert Chardoff, who work for United Artists. And they are successful and powerful enough producers that at a certain price point, they can just greenlight a project. They don't actually have to go and talk to the big money guys as long as comes in under a certain amount. And so they're just like, we like this. And they offer Stallone $350,000 for the rights to the screenplay. And here's the real life Rocky inspirational story. Stallone has $106 in his bank account. He has no car. He is quite literally trying to sell his dog because he cannot afford to feed both himself and his dog at the time. And they're like, we want to give you $350,000 for this script so that we can get Robert Redford or whoever the big guy is to star in it. And Stallone says, absolutely not. The only way I'm parting with this script is if I get to star in it. I wrote this for me. I'm the one who knows how to do it. I'm the one who can bring the actual conviction, who can actually play this character. It has to be me. And I'm sure a lot of people have made those sorts of stands, and we don't know who they are because nothing happened. They walked. And I'm sure. And then obviously,
I was about to make your life, kid.
Okay. I've heard those stories where I'm thoroughly frustrated with the artist. Like, hey, dude, you could have compromised and made something pretty cool, but instead your integrity got nothing made and made you no money. But in any case, Stallone holds out and they agree that, okay, this script is good enough. We want to do it, but we're going to pay you scale. We're not going to pay you anything more, $1 more than the minimum that we pay. And you're going to come on not just as an actor, but as a screenwriter. You're going to rewrite this sucker for free. So yeah, well, and we're going to make the movie itself for way less money. They had wanted to do it for $2 million with Robert Redford, Ryan O'Neal, one of the big guys from the time. But if Stallone's going to star in it, then we're going to cut the budget in half. We're going to do it for $1 million. And the big money guys also tell the little money guys, if you go $1 over the million, then you're paying for it. Like, we're not spending a cent, not a penny more than $1 million on this thing. And both of these producers end up mortgaging their houses to get the film done, to get an additional $100,000 or so. But there is also a funny story of the big money guy needing to give a final green light on it, and they send him a film that Stallone was in, and it's just so that he can make sure, okay, do we really like this guy? And he's not sure. And he says, like, which one's Stallone? And somebody points out the wrong guy, some guy that we've never heard of. And he's like, oh, that guy's cool. Yeah, we can have him in a movie. And it's not until the movie's like at the premiere that he's like, what? And he's really angry that he apparently signed off on this thing based on some random guy in another movie. I don't know if that's a true story or not, but that's one of those stories. So yeah, they make the movie. They make it extremely low budget. Stallone has to rewrite the script for no money and makes scale on it. But obviously, it's a Rocky story. He goes the distance. He
makes a career
out of it. Although, interestingly, with Stallone, what happened was a little bit like Rocky 2. He had trouble making a career out of this. Like, he starred in a bunch of things that just weren't hitting. And then he was like, okay,
got to go back to the Rocky.
Let me do Rocky. Yeah, let me do Rocky. Let me do another round. And that's when his career really started to take off. And then he got Rambo and these franchises. And he really just, for my money, he feels like a guy that wanted to experiment, wanted to be interesting, and had success with it with the original Rocky, but then found that he was sent packing every time he tried to be creative enough that he was just like, okay,
fine.
You guys want Rambo 3, Rambo 4, Rambo Last Blood, Rambo First Blood, Rocky 6. Cobra.
I'll just make money off of it.
Yeah. You want me to just say cheeseball? You want me to just be Schwarzenegger? Great. And I think I've always thought it's a little sad. I love Schwarzenegger, but Schwarzenegger, when you see him in a movie, he's doing the best possible thing that he can with his talent. Like, Schwarzenegger was born to be Schwarzenegger. Stallone's always slumming a little bit. He's always a little smarter than the material. When you get to the sort of Judge Dredd, whatever, just his bad kind of action.
Lots of crummy stuff.
Yeah.
Cliffhanger. I mean, I know a lot of people like that one. I don't get it.
I really think his acting in Rocky 2 is just, I think it's peak Stallone. I think it's unparalleled. Like, really, like, he plays such, like, you feel there's something there's enough suave about Rocky in the first Rocky movie that you can see Roger Ebert saying, this is our Brando.
Right.
The next Brando. In Rocky 2, he leans harder into the actual character of Rocky than he does even in Rocky 1. Like the character as written and conceived. And I think it's such a sellout, bang up performance.
Right.
It's like you cannot conceive. You think they found some bum on the street to play himself and held his hand through the movie. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. I think it's really excellent.
There's obviously a lot of, if you watch Stallone in interviews, he's actually a very charming guy.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of Stallone in Rocky. The kind of just a little bit of bravado, a little bit of machismo, but also charm and a quirky sense of humor and just the joy of sort of being alive. And it's like Stallone had two modes. He could play that guy or he could play like the stoic action guy. And it's just too bad he did so many stoic characters because he's actually a great motor mouth. He's a great kind of almost Robert Downey Jr. type. Just the guy. I mean, he's never going to be as classy as Robert Downey Jr., but just like the guy with the patter.
Yeah.
He's actually
so weird.
He's actually really good at. And again, most people just think he does his thing. So that is the big story for Rocky. There's a couple other things we should talk about. John Avildsen, as Ben was talking about. The great director of Rocky and The Karate Kid, I'm reading here, from 1985. And nothing else. Nobody cares about the rest of this guy's career.
Karate Kid 2?
Karate Kid 2, yes.
Have you ever heard of Karate Kid 3, Nathan? Yep. Little movie? You might have heard of it.
I've heard of Rocky 5 as well. This guy feels like a good filmmaker. I mean, he brings real atmosphere. Both Karate Kid and Rocky really have a sense of place. Like, you really feel the Philadelphia of Rocky, and you really feel the California of Karate Kid. And he's good with actors.
He's good with actors. He's good with making the fight scenes talk about character.
Yeah.
Both Rocky and Karate Kid have that special something where you're like, it doesn't matter if it's a slow karate match of high school kids in the 80s. It doesn't matter. Like he captures what makes this exciting.
Yeah, we're telling a story here.
Yeah.
And we're in suspense.
He's got it.
We're drawn into it. Yeah. He makes very absorbing films, but...
Oh, two of them.
Two of them, yeah. Well, he worked his way up in the 60s doing industrial films for places like IBM, and then broke into the industry with a film called Turn to Love Turn On to Love, 1969, which, if you can imagine from that title, it was kind of a nudie, hippie exploitation film about a bored housewife who goes to Greenwich Village to smoke pot and then have sex. So not a really auspicious way to break into the industry, but he did it. And then he did a bunch of lame movies. I'm familiar with some of them. I mean, he did like a George C. Scott international thriller. He did some stuff that kind of sounds good on paper, but really the things that he did that broke through were Rocky and The Karate Kid. And his obituary said, Rocky director of Rocky and Karate Kid dies. So that's John Avildsen. I mean, we can maybe talk about a little bit more about what he brings to this movie as we go. He was obviously made for this movie, but nothing else really that distinguishes him. Some lame attempts in the 90s to kind of do the formula again. Yeah. Talia Shire, who plays so wonderfully Adrienne, is, of course, we've talked about her before. She's poor, battered little Connie in The Godfather. She has a real line in kind of women with domineering men in their lives. And so she's the sister of Francis Ford Coppola. She was born Talia Rose Coppola, which would make her, if for anyone who's doing the math, the aunt of Nicolas Cage and Sofia Coppola, and the mother of Jason Schwartzman.
That part I did not know.
Yeah, she is Hollywood royalty. I mean, she's part of the family. She was cast, her breakout role was Connie in The Godfather. She gets an even better part as Connie, though, in The Godfather, too. She's got a really small part, but a really potent thing. Her storyline is great in that movie, and one of the saddest and darkest of them in its way. But basically, in The Godfather script and in the novel, Connie is described as the most beautiful woman in the world. She's the mafia princess that everybody wants to marry. And so Francis Ford Coppola, in a very sweet way, is like, well, who's the most beautiful woman Oh, my sister, of course. And so she does Connie in Godfather in 72, and then Godfather Part 2 in 74, and then beats out people like Susan Sarandon for Rocky, beats out a bunch of big names because they're just, for the sort of unflattering reason that you'd expect, which is we can't hire Susan Sarandon, that ruined. Like, we need a woman that's plausibly mousy and past her prime and not beautiful, and till she takes off those glasses.
Mhm.
But man, this is one of the only castings. I'll just go ahead and give my take right here. Like, I hate the cliche of, like, you always have these total babes who are wearing glasses and they're supposed to be ugly, and then they take off the glasses and it's like, yep, you're still a babe. Didn't fool me. But she actually really does a nice transformation in this movie of being the kind of person you wouldn't notice in the first half, and then actually being very beautiful as she blossoms.
Yeah, she's not pretty until she is.
Yeah. Which is
Until she's drawn out and left.
Yeah, which is sweet.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
works well for the movie. And she did 1 billion of the Rocky sequels. She's got, apparently, as Jake says, good material to play in part 2. She gets a little sidelined after that.
Yeah, I was just looking at the sort of ratings. Rocky 2 is the highest fan-rated Rocky film.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say it's
And
their
it
favorite.
is not nearly as well. It's like only 65% critic. I think that's because of the melodrama and the retread of it all. But I think in terms of just, we're going to come back to this material, and
Siskel and Ebert loved it. Those guys were always hip for the most part. They were behind the times on some things, but mostly they were hip. And they're just like, this is the way they describe it is the story didn't really finish. We didn't know. It's more like The Godfather Part 2, where it's just, you're picking up. It's like, it's not another story. It's like Rocky 1 and Rocky 2 actually become the story.
Uh-huh.
It's a complete story. And I think it really works well with the first one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I would have watched it in preparation for this podcast, but I didn't watch Rocky 1 with my wife, and so I didn't want to ask her to watch Rocky 2, and I didn't feel like rewatching Rocky with her. But so,
well, that's too bad. Amanda really.
Yeah, maybe I'll just say, "Hey, babe, you want to watch Rocky 2?" And she'll say, "Of course, yes, sir." Anyway, Talia Shire, she kind of has her place in history as in 2 of the most popular franchises of all time and 2 of the most iconic films of all time. I'm glad she doesn't just have Godfather, because all she really gets to do in that movie is get beat up. But as I laugh, a few other, we'll just go through a couple of these other people. We got Burt Young, who plays Paulie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the thing about Burt Young is he always played guys like Paulie. Played a really good Paulie. I mean, I don't know what else to say about him.
Burt Young played Burt Young.
Burt Young played Burt Young. He's good at that kind of.
If you wanted Burt Young in your film, you could have him.
Yep, you could have
for
him
a price,
and he'd play that part. Yeah, and he was in lots of Rocky movies, and I'm sure enjoyed the paychecks. And he's good. Burgess Meredith. I think most people, if you're like me, you know him as the Penguin in the Adam West, Batman, quack quack quack, all that sort of thing. With his cigarette holder and actually probably most people know him from Rocky. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
if you're like me, you know him from Rocky. And also, he was the Penguin in that thing you watched at your grandparents' house. Oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. Wow, fun.
Well, he's one of those guys that...
Yeah.
He's also in the Grumpy Old Men movies.
Yes,
and
the sex-starved octogenarian dude.
And makes a bunch of funny sex jokes.
Yep. There you go.
I haven't seen him.
He's like, it's one of those things where it's like Alec Guinness. Like, Alec Guinness did not want to be remembered for Star Wars. He was an actor's actor. He loved acting. He loved being in things that challenged him. And then everyone's like, yay, Obi-Wan. And Burgess Meredith, same story. Everybody remembers Rocky. Everybody, if you're cool like me, you remember Batman. This guy was an actor's actor. He's part of the Actors Studio in New York, the Method School, the school that gave us Brando and all these guys. Like, this guy was a stage sort of actor, and in his prime he played all the Shakespearean heroes. And
I was in Lear.
Yeah. Exactly. Look up, if you want to know what Jake's referencing and you don't, look up Bob Hoskins' Super Mario interview. It's quite funny.
Amazing.
Yeah. Bob Hoskins, well, I won't spoil it for you, just look it up. So yeah, Burgess Meredith, he's the dude, but fondly remembered for his roles in these things. We need to talk about Steadicam, and we need to talk about Bill Conti being the musician. Let's talk about Steadicam first. So if people don't know what Steadicam is, it's a device that keeps the camera balanced and not sort of at the mercy of the camera operator's jittery fingers. It's a way to not do shaky cam, but also not have the camera attached to a dolly or a crane or a tripod. So if you wanted to have the camera move and you wanted to do smooth shots before the Steadicam was invented, you could have a dolly, which is just like the camera's on wheels, basically, and there's some dudes pushing it. You could have a crane, which is like the camera's attached to a crane. There's always a crane shot at the end of the movie as we pull out. Or you could do somebody's just holding it, but cameras, especially back then, were big and bulky, and you'd get really shaky, obvious camera movements. And so there's all kinds of things that we take for granted now that you couldn't do back then in terms of filming action, in terms of having the camera follow people or go people. A perfect example is in this movie where the camera just smoothly follows Rocky up the stairs, and in the most iconic shot that actually is only possible because they had this invention called the Steadicam, and this is one of the movies that introduced it. So this guy named Garrett Brown invented it and basically went to Hollywood to say, hey, I've invented this thing. Does anybody want to pay me money and use it? And Hollywood was like, yeah, cool, we'll do that. That sounds great. We would love to be able to do the kind of stately, precise camera shots that we thought we could only do with a crane, but in closer and more confined spaces and without a ton of hassle. We'd love to be able to eventually do long action scenes where we follow John Wick or whoever up a flight of stairs and we never cut, all the kind of 1970, all the kind of the in vogue now long, no cuts kind of thing. That's all predicated on having a camera that
can achieve that
by not being bound to a tripod. And so the Steadicam is just something we take for granted, but they couldn't do any of that. Just imagine the hassle of having a big, bulky film camera, and you've got to lay track for it, and you've got to make sure that track doesn't show up in
any of your scenes as you move. So it's part of the choreography is where your track's laid and how people move and how it's shot.
Right. And you begin to understand why all movies before the 1970s are just a little bit more calm. Singing in the Rain, it's like Gene Kelly's doing the dancing. The camera's not doing the dancing. The camera's just kind of slowly.
Although sometimes it does some dance. Like you have the one in the studio where it's sweeping back and forth.
So I'm obviously generalizing wildly, especially in silent films before when they didn't have to worry about the sound element of it. There's some very dynamic camera work and like a Fritz Lang, the German expressionists, but there is a period in kind of the 40s and 50s where camera work does get more languid, and it's because we have big bulky cameras, and unless we want to do shaky cam, which wasn't really in vogue until the French discovered it in the 1960s, we're going to have to be anchored to a tripod one way or another. And so it's just, that's the whole style that you think of as the Hollywood style of, John Ford or something like that. The camera's always got to be anchored to something. And so you never see John Wayne, like the camera follows him as he
moves through doors and into different.
Right. Exactly. And so
he's on a set.
Right. Yeah.
Where the cameras can be on dollies or on, they can move.
And it's not that we can't, like Hitchcock's famous for these really elaborate dolly shots where we start at the top of the stairs and then Ingrid Bergman in Notorious, she's got to get the key, it's the MacGuffin, and so she grabs the key, and then the camera's going to go all the way down the stairs, and it's good. But Hitchcock had the money and the resources and the time and the expertise to set up these really elaborate things. Most people working on a budget without the prestige or the clout of Hitchcock just weren't going to be able to do those kinds of things. But the Steadicam opens up a whole world of those kinds of things. And Garrett Brown, the inventor of the Steadicam, had shot a promo reel where he literally filmed his girlfriend running up the steps of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, what's now known as the Rocky Staircase. And they actually saw that promo reel and were like, oh,
we're going to do that.
We should have Rocky do that. And so he filmed his girlfriend doing it one week, and then a couple months later, he's doing the same thing with young Sylvester Stallone, who's about to become the biggest thing in the world.
Oh, man. I'm sorry. I keep processing as we go back through Rocky, processing it through the lens of Rocky 2. And people with the staircase scene, what they actually remember is the staircase scene in Rocky 2 where he's being followed by
with all the people,
a crowd. And people don't remember how well earned that is, actually.
It's the kind of scene that shows up like in a Naked Gun movie or like in
right.
One of those
it's because it's stupid and it's cheesy that people would be following Rocky, but it's actually really, really well earned in Rocky 2, even by the setup of him just doing all this stuff on his own by himself. Nobody knows and nobody cares. Sorry.
No, I think your proselytization has won at least one convert. I plan to watch Rocky.
I do
as
for
soon
sure.
as possible. So There are a couple other movies we could talk about that helped invent the Steadicam, but for our purposes and for the purposes of most people, Rocky was really popularized it. There's so much in this movie that's achieved through it. It's just kind of a fun film nerd thing to go back and look at what they're doing and how they're able to do it with the Steadicam. Most of the big boxing match is Garrett Brown in the ring with the guys, which you just couldn't do. I mean, if you think about The Quiet Man, if you think about how we don't have a proper boxing scene in that movie exactly, but if you think about how a John Ford punching scene is done, as opposed to the really visceral in the ring feel, which we take for granted now, but which Rocky was really the first. And they just did that by rehearsing, choreographing, and remembering the entire round of any given round in the fight. And then the actors would just do it. And Garrett Brown did one pass where he was in the arena with them, and then one where he was doing it from the vantage point of the audience. And that's most of the fight that you see. And it's really effective. And it's so ubiquitous now in the way we film these things. But
and then they introduce more slow-mo in Rocky 2.
Yeah. Apparently, what's his face? Michael Jordan found some fun ways to spice it up in this new Creed 3 movie, but I don't think any of us have seen it.
Not yet.
I don't know. He kept doing the round. Maybe it was just
I'm building up to it. That's why we're doing
through
this. I'm going through them all. We're building up to it.
Yeah, I still got to see Creed 2.
So they filmed this movie in 29 days. I wanted to make sure and get that in. But let's talk about Bill Conti and Gonna Fly Now, because that is the other thing about this movie. I think Eye of the Tiger, arguably the real Rocky song that people remember. I mean, everybody remembers Gonna Fly Now.
Yeah.
But if I say Rocky song, I think probably someone will say Eye of the Tiger first, maybe?
Well, because they don't necessarily know the name Gonna Fly Now, because they don't even associate that with lyrics so much as the melody.
Right. Eye of the Tiger has lyrics.
Yeah, it's Survivor,
Eye
right?
of the Tiger.
I didn't know Eye of the Tiger was a Rocky song.
Eye of the Tiger's Rocky, but it's not till Rocky 4.
Rocky 3 is what I see
Rocky
here.
Yeah, it's Rocky 3. I remember that much.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, it's sort of like, oh, we've got to take some of these themes and pull them together. And he's lost the eye of the tiger. Then that's going to be Apollo's theme in his training of Rocky, right? Because Mickey's dead. Isn't that how it goes?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I always forget when Mickey bites it. So Bill Conti is a workman for the studio. He actually is ghostwriting spaghetti western scores and things like that. So he's like, they're like, we bought a cheesy Italian movie. Can you write some new music for it for no credit? And he's doing things like that. And this is another like inspirational success story. The studio's like, hey, we have no money. How about we pay you $25,000 as a package deal? So you are going to get $25,000, Bill Conti, this guy that no one's heard of. You are going to compose the score for that much. You are going to hire your own orchestra out of that money. You're going to hire your singers. Anything you want to do to produce this score, you're going to pay for out of that money. And then whatever's left, you can keep. And so I think he ended up making about $15K off of it. But
poor guy,
he's doing just fine because he did produce a little song called, which you may not know. The title is "Gonna Fly Now." I think most of the lyrics are "Gonna Fly Now." Also, I
flying
think
high now.
Flying high now. It's got 30 words, famously, and it went gold, Billboard #1, and obviously is ubiquitous. The Philadelphia Eagles and other sports teams and sporting events, and we all know
it's on every workout pregame playlist of all time, and has been since 1976.
So iconic. Trump used it, and Conti in 2016, and Conti was like, did I get paid? And they were like, yes. And he was like, cool. I am happy for anyone to use my music,
so long as they pay me.
And people were like, Conti's ruining the world. But yeah, he became a very successful film writer and did some James Bond themes. If anybody remembers Spy Who Loved Me, what is the famous Carly song? Nobody Does It Better. One of the most famous James Bond love song, credit songs. That's Bill Conti. I don't really love, I mean, it's very 70s, this guy. A little corny to my ear, but you cannot deny the potency of
ultra synth is little.
Yeah. If I'm going to go with a cheesy synth score, I'll take Vangelis and Chariots of Fire as far as inspirational sports synth goes, personally. But I'm sort of embarrassed.
I can't do it. That's too cheesy for me. This one, I'm here for.
You're here for it.
Yeah,
I'm here for both of them.
I don't know that I can even. How does Chariots of Fire go?
Dun 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 dun.
Okay, yeah. Okay, got it.
Dun, dun, dun.
It is cheesy, and I hate every time it's used in like a commercial or something, but it is actually fairly potent in the movie when you see those
it's great.
dorky British guys with their dorky British sport.
It's great.
Yeah, but when you hear that ding, 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 and then you get your bump out about like, oh man, the blood gets flowing.
Mm. Yeah, it's one of the great scores.
Let's go.
It's Star Wars, the James Bond theme, what Rocky, they're all in the conversation, right? So after all that, of course, the actual inspirational part of this inspirational story is that this was the highest grossing film of 1976. It was nominated for Best Picture and won. It was nominated for Best Director and won for John Avildsen. One of those interesting times where a guy that is not really going to go on to do anything great and that isn't remembered all that fondly won just based on the popularity of one thing. Stallone gets a nomination. Talia Shire gets a nomination. Burgess Meredith, of course, his part was written to get a nomination, and it gets a nomination. Burt Young is nominated. It's possible that Young and Meredith split the vote. You Rocky fans couldn't decide who to vote for supporting actor, so neither one of them got it. Screenplay, Stallone gets a nomination for the screenplay. Gonna Fly Now, of course, is nominated, which I'm interested. I'm just going to click on what was the best song that won. I'm really interested to know what beat that and whether we even could hum it. So 1976. Evergreen, Barbra Streisand, Love Theme from A Star Is Born. Could any of you guys hum
No.
Evergreen by Babs?
Nope. No.
Oh man, I could hum half of the other things. The Ave Satani choral thing from The Omen and the Pink Panther. Well, maybe it's not the Pink Panther theme. Anyway, Rocky cleaned up. Biggest film of 1976. The critical intelligentsia was a little snotty about the whole thing. Like, hey, this is not an original story. Why didn't you have him die of cancer at the end so it would be original or something? Like, what? He's going to defeat his demons and win the thing that he set out to do. What kind of claptrap are you telling the American people? You should tell them that they suck and will be defeated and nothing will go their way. That will be a successful formula for filmmaking. But it was huge. It was iconic. It made a bunch of people's careers, and it is one of those rare classic movies that most people have seen. Most people know the references. Most people know it even if they haven't seen it. But I feel like most people have also just seen it. And it's part of the pantheon. It is Rocky. That is the story of Rocky. Now, sometimes when you come to a movie like that, you're like, oh, well, that doesn't really hold up anymore now that 1 billion people and their brothers have done the same thing. What do you guys think about Rocky, and how'd you like it? And how do you think it holds up? And what are your overall thoughts on this sucker?
It's great seeing it for the first time. I was sorry I hadn't seen it before. Just really fun, really sweet. I kept expecting all kinds of dumb things to happen in the plot, like, oh, this dumb, petty criminal boss is going to get his hooks into Rocky, and there's going to be some dumb subplot about this guy.
It never goes wrong. It's just a good movie.
And instead, it's actually sweet. It's like, actually, even that guy actually likes Rocky and wants him to succeed.
Yeah, he's actually kind of a good guy in his own horrible way.
Yeah. My inner snob wants to sneer at that a little bit.
I don't care. I was just so happy.
It's just sweet.
It's sweet.
I mean,
in Rocky 2, one of the best jokes. Rocky just gets married. And the guy's there, like at the wedding, and he pulls Rocky aside and he's like, Rocky, I know that like people are trying to get you to do commercials and things, but I don't think that's good for you. I think that you need to invest your money, and you can invest it with me and I'll take care of it for you. What do you think about condominiums? And Rocky kind of looks around and pulls him aside and says, I've never used one.
Wow. That's pretty great. Well, there's all kinds of dumb stuff like that the movie doesn't do. Like, it doesn't make that, even if that's too sweet.
Oh.
I'm just happy it didn't do it. And I'm happy it didn't do any number of things. I wasn't expecting him to go catch Burgess Meredith's character and be like, okay, yeah, you can train me. I was just like, yeah, he's understandably bitter. This trainer sucks, and this is how this movie is going to be, and the movie will find some other device for training Rocky, but instead it's like, no, actually, Rocky's a sweet guy. He's going to give this guy a chance, and it's going to be sweet. I was like, oh, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
So the movie's always doing stuff like that.
Yeah, that's one of those things it's like, oh, the movie resolve this plot point in a way that's simultaneously kind of perfunctory, but also like, oh, sweet, we don't have to waste time. Like, of course he's going to make up with this guy, he needs a trainer.
Well, he's going to do it in a way with no dialogue. It's just a shot of it's like a long shot of him going and putting his hand on his back, and you're like, oh, that was well done. Like,
yeah, and we just like cut out 15 boring minutes out of this movie where they're estranged from each other, and Rocky has to come around.
It's just like, you feel all the drama, you feel all of the pressure, and why didn't you invest in me before? You're just going to make money off of me, and then it's like, well, who else is going to invest in me?
And I've got to vent my rage. Like, of course I would be bitter. So the movie's going to spend time with me being angry. But then, I'm done with that.
Yep.
You have the same sort of thing in, man, I'm sorry to keep doing this.
Rocky 2.
Well, what happens is Rocky wants to he's at his back's against the wall. He wants to take the fight. And Mickey's like, you can't do it. You're like partially blind out of your eye from the last fight. Like, he's going to destroy you. And he like slaps him a couple times. And they have a scene in the hallway again. And this time it's Mickey saying, no, I'm not going to fight you. And then a little bit later, they're both watching Apollo on the news or something like that, just mocking the crap out of Rocky. And the next thing you know, there's a bang, bang, bang at Rocky's door. And it's Mickey, and it's, let's destroy the bum or something like that. I think we ought to knock his block off. Yeah, that's the line. They put it in Burgess Meredith's mouth, and he, of course, delivers it as
only he can.
Cheesily and perfectly, and as only he can. And I don't know. It's total sports nerd geek stuff, like cheese ball, but it's
all in the context of like, actually, if you're a loser, you don't have to keep being a loser. And that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You shouldn't be a loser anymore. And the whole movie is just very sweet that way. Like, no, there's a lot of reasons for me to keep being a loser. And I kind of have a bad context. And my best friend is kind of a drag. But so what? I'm not going to be a loser.
Not to mention a drunk.
And a drunk. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Adrian's not going to be a loser either. And she's going to be like, I'm not a loser. And that's how things can go. So it just I just didn't expect it to be so optimistic. I mean, that's the whole Rocky deal. But like I said, I wasn't plugged into it. So.
Well, I think what this movie does so well that I always forget, because it's not something that I'm used to in the genre or the like most feel good movies or inspirational movies. Yeah, they have to start out dark. They have to start out with the team losing. They have to start out in the dumps. There has to be something for the character to recover from or overcome. Sure. But you always kind of feel like you're in the machinery of a feel-good movie.
Right.
This movie reminds me a little bit, in this one way only, of something like It's a Wonderful Life, where it's got a feel-good ending, but it could just as easily have a feel-bad ending, given what you've seen coming up. Like,
yeah, that's right.
Feels like a drama about a character who's not having a wonderful life for most of the movie, and it's convincingly that way, and it's not all just set up for a payoff. This movie, some of it's just the zeitgeist, some of it's just sort of what they happened to capture with 70s Philadelphia, I think. But it feels like Rocky is plausibly in a world where he is just always a small-time collector for this gangster dude, and his dreams don't come true. And like this could very easily be, for 2/3 of it, just be a little quirky drama about people who struggle. And then it's still, even 40 years later or 50 years later, whatever it is, with all the baggage and all the Rocky movies, it still kind of feels convincingly enough that way that when the triumph comes, it doesn't just feel like it was inevitable. It feels like the gods really had to smile on Rocky, and he really had to be persistent, and he really overcame something.
Yeah, but also it feels like the boxing victory really is secondary, which is how the movie is structured. The boxing victory is secondary. It really is about, like, he did decide, no matter what happened, he actually successfully decided to be someone who could tell a little girl not to use bad words.
Yeah, he's going to be somebody.
Yeah.
And the moment Rocky actually wins in the fight is the moment he gets back up.
Yeah.
That last time when Mickey's telling him to stay down, and Apollo thinks he's won, and Apollo looks over, and you see that sort of, like, say what you want about what's his face as an actor.
Carl Weathers.
About Carl Weathers. The look that he gives in that moment of just having his soul taken by the fact that Rocky got back up on his feet is really great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then that's it. Like, he's won. Like, nothing else matters about how that fight ends. They changed the whole drama of the fight for Rocky 2. Apollo just is mauling
Mm-hmm.
Rocky, all of Rocky 2. He's just like beating him senseless the whole fight. It's not an even match where Apollo is being surprised. Apollo is just dominating the crap out of Rocky.
Which is how you expect this one to go. I mean,
which is how you expect this one to go.
You've been programmed to expect lose, win, last possible second.
Yeah, and in this one, Rocky's like surprisingly putting up an even fight to the end. And then in Rocky 2, Apollo is just demolishing the crap out of Rocky, the whole fight. And then Rocky comes on strong at the end and gets a lucky punch in because Apollo is determined. Apollo can just stand to the side. He's won the fight. He's dominated the whole fight. But Apollo's pride is, I've got to go in for the knockout. And when he goes in for the knockout, Rocky gets his shot.
Right. Do you have any revelations in watching this movie again? Like, what's your big picture thoughts? Obviously, you love the movie and love the franchise.
I just forget how much I loved it. I forgot how much I loved it. I forgot. And I've revisited it, I don't know, probably in my 20s and was like, oh man, this is really great stuff. Like this isn't just the kid stuff I remembered it as being or whatever. But I hadn't come back to it since then. And so I just love it. I just love it. I think it's great. I think it's not quite, what separates it from Spielberg. So it's like almost there. It's like almost there with Spielberg, but it's just not fun top to bottom the way that a Spielberg movie is fun. It's a good movie and kind of formative one, and I love it. But
yeah, it's a movie that I really love it too. I don't think I could actually reverse engineer this movie. If we stepped into a parallel dimension where there was no Rocky and I didn't just remember it beat for beat and I had to recreate it. If you told me to do that with Star Wars, I could actually do it because I know the beats of the hero's journey. And this is, of course, a hero's journey film. But the weird mix of kind of quirky character comedy and stuff that actually, it would be like if Star Wars was the hero's journey and resolved itself as a hero's journey and followed the beats of a hero's journey. But then like half the movie was Luke hanging out with Han Solo and they weren't just archetypes. They were remarkably specific characters and they were just like
that could only be played
by those actors
with the specific chemical combinations, right? All firing in the exact same ways,
and they all sort of have to do double duty as like this is Rocky the type, and this is Rocky this remarkably specific character. We talk a lot about Luke is intentionally boring because you want to be able to plug yourself into him. Well, Rocky's not that actually.
No, you could take Star Wars. You could go to George Lucas and say, okay, we're from the future and you got your casting all wrong.
Right.
You could change the entire cast. The movie still plays and still's a hit. It just doesn't matter. Like you can plug and play. You can argue that Harrison Ford matters. But outside of that, it doesn't matter that they got Alec Guinness. And certainly it doesn't matter that they got Mark Hamill. And certainly it doesn't matter that they got Carrie Fisher. Like it's just, those just happen to be the people that they plugged in to a formula that was going to win no matter what they did.
Right. And but not only can you not imagine Rocky without Stallone, you can't imagine it without Talia Shire. You can't really imagine it without some of the other supporting cast. I think it's weird how much, like in a normal, if I'm writing this movie, it's like, just in terms of screenplay structure and storytelling and the way that it works, it's like him finding a girl, him interacting with Polly, all of this stuff has to be so connected to his like primal Joseph Campbellian quest. And it's sort of not. I mean, I know it sort of is too. I know,
but it's so hidden. It's like it hides that structure.
Yeah, it really hides it well, and it really is.
It's like it doesn't know what it's doing. Like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, is what it feels like. And so you're left with either this is
just an accidental
something
work
that
of
came
genius.
out of the id, fully formed, or this is the work of a genius. This is either accidental genius or it's the work of a genius, but it's nothing in between.
Right. Well, and we've just talked about, I mean, obviously Rocky 2 sounds like a masterpiece, but it's not like Stallone has been able to recreate this every time. And I really don't know if I could. I mean, I would be stuck between, if I tried to do this, if I just tried to make this movie, the problem that I would run into is I would either make the character stuff so connected to the archetypal stuff that it would just all feel like a fairy tale, which is fine, but it wouldn't be this movie.
But the only way to do it then is for you to write it as yourself as Rocky, right? Like,
yeah, but then I would do the other thing. I think I could also fall into the other trap, which is just writing a hangout movie that happens to have a little structure. This movie almost is just a hangout movie. Like the Polly stuff, does it resolve? I don't know, not really, kind of. Is Adrian super connected to his quest? Well, yes, but also it's just the thing that he happens to be doing. I mean, this movie walks such a... I do not think that I could make this happen. I think you're right. The only way I could make it happen is by accident, if I was just talking about myself and my life, and if I sort of saw my life as a Campbellian quest, and so it's like everything would tie in. But I just don't think that this is an easy movie. As formulaic as it is, it's not an easy movie to engineer.
It's feels more like a quest, just not to be a loser than it does a proper hero's quest. And everything makes sense in that context, like all the stuff with Polly, with Adrian, the boxing, but it's not primarily a hero's quest boxing movie. It doesn't move that way.
Then if you cast it that way, it's like you don't actually have catharsis in each one of those arenas. Like with Polly, it's kind of like, well, okay, this is how you negotiate having a friend who's a loser and isn't going to become not a loser. With Adrian, it's like, we're going to take the next step. We're going to make this happen. But it's not like we're going to get married. And it's like we kind of get there early in the movie, actually. And then we are just sort of happy with each other. It's like, it's a very weird dramatic structure, actually, and a very effective one. But it's not how you would write this movie.
Yeah. I mean, it is like every part of it, Stallone seems to know and have affection for. Every part of the city he walks through. I'm going to interact with these guys who sing on the street corner. Now I'm going to interact with these teenage punks, pre-adolescent punks.
Yeah, and they all mean something to him. They're all people. They're all vignettes of something that he knows and cares about and wants people to see.
Yeah.
Right? Like he wants those people in his life or those people that he's run into or interacted with or whatever to feel seen.
Mm-hmm. And it does a nice job of that.
Yeah.
Well, and it wants to say, as much as Rocky succeeds at the end of the movie and becomes an extraordinary hero, I think it wants to praise his everyday sort of heroism. Like, I think this, I read a bunch of synopsises of this movie. Often when I'm preparing after I watch a movie, I'll read the Wikipedia synopsis or whatever just to remind myself of the beats that we're going to be talking about. Nobody ever includes what I consider to be one of the most crucial character scenes, which is when he takes that little girl aside and says, hey, you don't want to become this. Everybody just skips that. To me, that's so important. It illustrates who this character is.
How it ends.
I know.
Right?
I love it.
Hey, Rocky, up yours. And then he walks away mumbling about, who do you think you are, trying to tell people how to live their lives? Like, what's wrong with you?
And it doesn't work. You see her back with the bad people.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
It's never like, we don't come back to that. But it's just like, here's a guy who can't help but
he's trying to
sort of take responsibility in his self-effacing and also braggadocious, charming way. He just can't help but love the people around him. We'd want this guy to be a deacon or an elder or something like that. Maybe he'd need a little theological beefing up.
No, but you'd look at this guy and just be like, this is a man who ought to aspire to, because he cares. He loves everybody around him. He takes responsibility.
He's going to come to church, and within one visit, he'll find somebody to take aside and encourage or gently rebuke, or like he's just that guy.
I think my favorite scene might be the one where he's in the apartment with Adrian, and I forget what she's doing, but she's trying to encourage him. He's like, just go make the meat.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the film plays it so subtle, but it's just like, he like starts to look sad as she goes off, and then he gets up. She's like, hey, yo, I'm sorry. And it's just because he knows that's how Polly treats her, and you don't have to have a speech about that's how your brother treats you. And the film's like, just trust the viewer to know what's going on, but it's just this sweet thing where it's like he's just going to catch himself and be like, no, that's how she's been treated her whole life. That I wasn't even that bad right then, but that was still that same thing. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go apologize.
Any more of that.
Yeah, I just love that.
And Rocky in this movie is a character. You don't actually get this with every protagonist in every movie. He's a character who you can watch process like that and be with him, and you know him well. Within a few scenes, you're just like, okay, I understand what this guy's doing, and I'm with him. Like, oh, he walked into the ice skating rink, and he thought they were gonna, and now he has to talk this guy down. And so many times, a scene like that, the character is supposed to be a little ahead of you as the audience, and it's like, oh, he's a little smarter. He's got a trick up his sleeve. He's got a quip, whatever. But Rocky, it's like we're always really plugged into what he's trying to accomplish, big or small, and we're right there with him, and we're thinking out the strategy kind of and we're watching him respond, and we're feeling his feeling. You know,
was it even the best move to do it the way that he did? I don't know. It's just like what he had.
This is what he had. Yeah.
Being dejected by the girl saying "up yours" and kind of mumbling to himself. It's like we've all been there. I put my neck out for somebody, and then they're upset about it. And why did I waste my time? And I'm so stupid. And
nobody's gonna follow Rocky. Nobody's gonna be inspired by Rocky. Nobody cares. Which is why it does feel really well earned actually when the city's sort of like following Rocky as he's training to fight Apollo.
Yeah.
But a lot of what we're actually talking about is world building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that's what Avildsen really brings to this movie.
And 1970s Philadelphia is a storybook world that he doesn't assume anybody understands but him, and doesn't skimp on laying groundwork and building it out for people.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty...
Well, I think aspiring writers, especially as young writers, have to understand this. In order to be specific, or in order to be universal, you have to be specific.
Yeah.
Telling a specific Philadelphia story makes this movie so much more universal than if it just happened in anywhere USA and we didn't have the specific feeling. Because there's things we can plug ourselves. Maybe our city is littered with cigarette butts on the ground.
There's so much of this movie and its ambiance and its world that you feel like it couldn't have happened anywhere else but Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But that's what makes it special and universal, and it is secret sauce.
Yeah.
Kind of like Denis Villeneuve's Dune. You couldn't have it anywhere else but on that patch of sand, or that
patch of sand,
or that giant empty palace that looks like giant empty palaces always look. It couldn't have happened anywhere else.
Well, I think that's actually a good negative comparison point, because that does explain what it is I don't like about that movie, which is Arrakis does not feel like
there's no there.
There's no there. Perfect way to put it. The other thing I keep thinking I kind of don't want to say, because this is like the most mystically woo-woo kind of artsy thing I've ever said on this podcast, but there is just something about the verisimilitude of actually filming in Philadelphia, like the fact that this wasn't done on sound stages, the fact that I think they did a little bit of it in LA, but it feels like just capture like and store in batteries the psychic energy of a time and a place. And it does make this movie special in a way that would be impossible to recreate. I don't think without actually filming in Philadelphia at that time, you'd get the same movie. Like it is special. How much Philadelphia is a character in this movie? Yeah. So what else you guys got?
Well, just one thing I was thinking while watching this movie is, man, at least watching Rocky, you're like, this was just a more decent time. You watch Rocky go at it with Mr. Gazzo's driver. Mm-hmm. They're being really nasty to each other. And you're just like, man, these guys are so civil, polite to each other in their nastiness. Like, there's no F-bombing. There's no, like, foul. They're just like, they're almost polite. Mm-hmm. They clearly hate each other's guts. They're being really nasty. But the nastiness is so restrained and so much less nasty than what you expect.
Yeah, Time Magazine said this movie was what Scorsese's Mean Streets would have been if Frank Capra had made it.
Yeah.
Which is the snide way of putting what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's not whitewashing, it's Rocky washing.
But what they don't understand is Capra understood what humans were. I mean, It's a Wonderful Life. Like, that movie knows what Violet is. It just doesn't feel the need to spell it out for us or use the word.
Unless you fill in the blanks. This is a place where I think a lot of writers, creatives, movie makers really go wrong. And it's that need to fill in every blank and every detail instead of understanding that the potency of your storytelling lies in the imagination of the viewer. Right. And so there's so much. We repeat the dopey adage all the time that you give your audience 2 + 2 and let them make 4. You don't give them 4, right? But a lot of that actually can happen on a moral level too in your storytelling.
Yeah, I think that's true.
You don't have to give them the explicit version. You can hint at it and let them fill in the blanks with as much as or as little as they bring to it.
Yeah.
I have the answer. Good.
Yeah, I mean, I think of that sort of thing, that moral math, as being what ruins so many modern horror movies. In my mind, it's the difference between Silence of the Lambs, where Dr. Hannibal Lecter is locked up and we know he's a cannibal, but he's behind bars for most of the movie and we never really see what he's capable of. And then the sequel, Hannibal, where he's out and about and on the town and famously he's eating people's brains and stuff like that. But it's like, no matter what the most horrible thing that Thomas Harris, who wrote those novels, could imagine, it's not as horrible as me just knowing that this guy's a monster who's capable of anything. And certainly capable of anything I can imagine.
Because anything then becomes a reflection of my own fears.
Right.
And that's much more scary.
Right.
Right. You bring your imagination, your fears to bear on this specter that's created in Hannibal Lecter. And so you can do that with any number of characters, both positive and negative, both good and bad, on the level of creating mystery and giving space for people's moral imaginations to be a reflection of their fears and desires and everything else.
Right.
And their own sense of virtue. That's a part of good storytelling, is creating space for people to fill in blanks with their imagination. For goodness sake, that's relationships.
Mm-hmm.
That's relationships with the opposite sex. That's all creative things. That's poetry. That's art, is giving people space, creating a structure and opportunity to give people space to process themselves.
Yeah. Star Wars does not exist as an artifact in and of itself. Star Wars is a experience that I have with Star Wars. I mean, not to be too subjective or too woo-woo about it, but it is a chemical combination between me and the movie that occurs, and then it is the memory.
And listen, everyone listening to this understands this on a visceral level. Like, you listen to us talk about these movies and you get offended when we feel, and we negotiate this in our own conversations where each of us feel with certain movies like we actually have the special relationship with this particular movie. And we're offended that you think you're the one that has the special relationship with this movie. And we're negotiating that in our conversations, and you're negotiating that as you listen to us have this conversation. Mm-hmm. And you're negotiating that in conversations you have with other people about movies or books that are special to you, or that you feel like you have a unique relationship with. And that's because good movies and good books create enough space for your own imagination to work and for you to develop your own personal experience of that movie that is unique to you. And so then it does become very personal. And that's not to say that all art is subjective. And beauty has no objectivity, and art has no objectivity, and it's only in the eye of the beholder, and you just sort of passively create things, and it is what...
No, so it's an objective vessel that's either well-made or poorly made, either morally made or immorally made, an objective vessel for subjective feelings. Something may be terrible, and you may love it. Right there, we have a objective truth about the thing, and a truth about yourself, and we're always negotiating this space. I mean, what episode was it where we went off on a King Arthur Legend of the Sword riff for some reason? I mean, only every third episode. Yeah. But there you have exactly what Jake's describing. You have Ben feels like he has a special relationship with Guy Ritchie and with that movie. Nathan feels like he has a special relationship with King Arthur. And so they nearly come to blows because their special relationships are in contradiction to one another. And Ben's like, your special relationship doesn't matter. It doesn't have anything to do with my special relationship. My special relationship's the special relationship. And I'm like, well, your special relationship is stepping on my special relationship. And we're just both two guys with special relationships.
And that's what you have when you have anything that has any kind of artistic potency to it, which... the Arthur story does, and anybody who would want to argue otherwise is a moron. Which Guy Ritchie, you don't have to like him, you don't have to love him to say that he's a pretty special filmmaker with a pretty special style that really resonates with a certain kind of person. And I really enjoy his style too, and the types of movies that he makes. And so he has fans, and he has fans for good reason. And anytime somebody like a Guy Ritchie, who's more of an auteur, can connect with people, there's a special relationship that's developed there. And people have special relationships with Spielberg and Lucas and all kinds of people. Hitchcock, it doesn't matter who it is. Orson Welles, Francis Ford Coppola, it doesn't matter. But Martin Scorsese, it just doesn't matter, what end of the spectrum of pop art or...
But there's a certain sense in which oftentimes the more sort of specialized the person's talent is, the more special the relationship feels. In other words, Guy Ritchie's doing challenging things that not everybody's going to like. So
or appreciate.
So Ben feels like an extra kinship because he does get it and like it.
He sees it and understands it. He's an insider. And Ritchie creates part of what he's doing is creating that sense.
Creating insiders.
Yeah, exactly. Which has its place. Whereas if somebody insults the Iron Man franchise, I'm not going to be up in arms because, we all kind of like it. It kind of speaks to all of us a little bit. There are things like that too. And then there are things that speak a lot to a few of us. And then there are all gradations in between. I mean, the other thing I wanted to say about the notion of character is that we live in a land that is downstream of Freud and Jung and the psychologists, and our understanding of the human personality is not actually the same as most dramatists across history would have had. I mean, somebody like in Aristotle's Poetics, what we're talking about is not personality. It's not about personality. Greek theater is not about personality. It's about action and reaction. I do this, this happens. Mm-hmm. That's all it's about. And actually, when you look at Shakespeare, one way that you can make a lot of sense of what he's doing, because sometimes if you try and bring post-Freudian psychology to it, you're like, well, okay, why is this character changing? But no, it's just like Macbeth is this way because he did this thing. He did a thing. It's not actually about his daddy didn't love him or what motivated this choice. It's about the choice itself. It's about watching the choice play out. And I think the 70s auteur cinema is often like that. Like The Godfather is another, and Rocky are both, in a certain sense, not all that interested in what their characters are in some nebulous psychological sense. They're very interested in what their characters do. And so Michael Corleone, was he always bad? Was he always good? Who knows? But we know what choice he made, and we watch that tragedy unfold, and we're engrossed by it. And we know the choices that his father made and that his brother made, and we have a saga, a very powerful saga of different people making different choices. And
we're connecting it to real people in our lives and real choices that we've made and real choices we've observed others make that we know. And there's enough space with all the specificity that nobody relates to that family.
Right.
And yet everybody relates to that family on some level. And so that movie hits everybody different in their own special way. And that's part of the genius of it.
Right. And you can spend a long time talking about why people make the choices. But some of the reason that those conversations are fun is because the movie actually doesn't spend a lot of time interrogating it. Now, Rocky is interesting because Rocky is very much a character. He's very much somebody that we understand. But also, when you start to think about the things you don't know about Rocky, how much you have to sort of fill in, how much he is just a guy that exists to take responsibility for the people around him and to persist in his idea of good, and how little the movie feels. I mean, we have photographs around his mirror. We have some things. Yeah. But any movie now, it's like, well, Rocky, why don't you break down in tears and tell us the story about your dad and, you know, how he almost made it as a boxer, but then he couldn't quite cut it. And like, it's going to give us so much more in terms of fleshing this guy out as a fully formed individual and fleshing certainly the girl out. But it actually doesn't really.
It's nice to have a break from that.
It's nice to have a break from that. Like, he was mad at Mickey. Now he's not. You know why? Because he's a good guy who made the choice not to be mad at Mickey. Adrian was shy and repressed because her brother this way, but now she's blossoming, and that's the story. And she made that choice. And we don't actually need to understand everything. It's more powerful if we don't.
And so much, that mirror, to me, it's that mirror with the pictures on it. Like that's filmmaking. Mm-hmm. It's Brad Bird in The Iron Giant, where the kid's going to go to bed and he's going to put on his helmet, and you're going to see just sort of in the background, if you catch a glimpse, if you're paying attention, you're going to see a little picture of him on his dad's shoulders and his next to an airplane or something like that. His dad was some kind of pilot who died, and you fill in all the blanks yourself with all your own imagination, right? And it's all there for you. And you've got this mirror of pictures that he's going to stare at, and Adrian's going to come and say, "Is this you?" And he's going to say, "Yeah." And he's going to go take the picture and put it somewhere else. And he has a history, and there's some sadness, and it doesn't, like, you fill in the blanks.
Yeah.
It's there. All the visual pieces are there. And then now the rest is up to your imagination. And you take it as far as you want to take it. You don't need to think about it if you don't want to think about it. He's just a guy who made some decisions.
Right.
Or you think about the fact that, where are his parents? And how long has he been without his parents? And what kind of a sad childhood did this poor kid have? Like, and how did he get to the place where he's at now, where the only person looking out for him is this mob guy who has some sympathy for him because we're all Italian, so we're all somehow family. Like,
and if you are a guy with all that stuff,
Yeah.
you have a turtle. You have turtles named Cuff and Link. Like, how do you become that version of that guy?
Right.
Coming up with stupid jokes to tell the pet store girl.
Right.
And you only have Cuff and Link because maybe you walked by the pet store and saw a cute girl in there.
Right. Yeah.
And you just need to keep finding reasons to go back to the pet store. But I don't know. Maybe I just filled in that blank.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe that's my Rocky, but maybe that's not
Yeah.
the Rocky that Sylvester Stallone would tell
Maybe
you.
he was always a guy who was going to have turtles, and therefore one day he saw
Yep.
Adrian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we should talk about the love story. It's a great love story.
He's going to have Moby Dick too. You keep talking about Cuff and Link, but you're short selling Moby Dick.
Yeah, and the fact that he's named Moby Dick, like warrior, like, oh, we're gonna have the guy listen to Moby Dick. Our movie's deep, but
Stallone's or Rocky's never read Moby Dick. Couldn't possibly read Moby Dick, but he's sure gonna have a fish named Moby Dick, and he's gonna bring him over and let him visit with the turtles and let him watch some TV together.
yes. Well, okay, so let's go through. So we should talk about Adrian and the love story. It's a great love story. There are two pieces of serendipity to the love story that are fun to recount. Number one, they were supposed to have extras for the ice skating rink, and it was supposed to just be a regular ice skating rink scene, and they could only hire one extra. And so Stallone has 10 minutes, and he writes the scene, and it's one of everybody's favorite scene from the franchise and from the.
I love it.
It's immensely
great.
charming scene.
Ah, man. Constraints are so wonderful.
Number two, I don't know what exactly they had written for the scene in the apartment where they finally make love, maybe, or whatever they do, where she comes out of her shell. But Talia Shire was sick. She had a cold, and she did not want to get Stallone sick. And so all her hesitancy, like the entire way she played the scene, wasn't about acting. It was just about, like, I don't want this guy to touch me right now because he's going to get a cold. And it ended up completely changing the nature of the scene. And you have this little will they, won't they duet that plays out, which was apparently supposed to go quite differently. I don't know how in the script, but it just serendipitously happened.
It's the scene that makes the romance of the whole movie.
Yeah. Everything about the romance is great. I mean, when she says, "Do you want a roommate?" and he says, "Absolutely." That's just like the perfect little.
Well, I love that little turn of attitude in her at that moment too.
Mhm.
Like, there is real personality. Like, you don't see it, and then you're left with, did Rocky see it, or did he just bring it out? Did he create it?
Either way, she does a beautiful job of, without much on the page, she does a beautiful job of bringing so much to, without overdoing. I think it's so easy to overdo, as I've already said, an ugly duckling role where you're supposed to blossom. It's so easy to go too far, to make yourself too dowdy on the one extreme, and then suddenly turn into a beauty queen to make up for the fact that early in the movie you had to be dowdy. But she plays that stuff so realistically and doesn't seem to have a lot of ego about.
Well, she plays it so well that I don't think I realized how beautiful Talia Shire is until I was an adult.
Mm-hmm.
I think the dowdy just sort of stuck to her even after the glow up.
Yeah, I always kind
As
of
a
think
kid.
I think of her as kind of like a Shirley MacLaine. No, not Shirley MacLaine. The chick in The Shining, Jack Nicholson's wife. I think of her as that sort of mousy.
I just lost her name, but yes.
It's Shirley something.
I don't know why I lost it, but yes.
But it's the
Shelley
not-
Duvall. Shelley
there you
Duvall.
go.
Yeah,
it was the inverse Mary from It's a Wonderful Life,
yeah.
but never quite as Mary as Mary ever.
I mean, like Mary saw something in George and wanted it to blossom.
No, I mean, she starts as the librarian.
Yes.
And never quite makes it to full on Mary.
Yeah, no, nobody can be as vibrant as Mary
Donna
in It's a
Reed.
Wonderful Life. Yeah, that's impossible.
No.
But it's beautiful. I do love how much of it is underplayed. And yeah. So, love story, great. Never should have lost track of it in the sequels. Anything else you guys want to say about any of that? Gazzo.
I think they probably don't. I think they probably learned the lesson in the Creed movies.
Yes. Well, that's one of the nice things is that the Creed movies, I don't think, even more so than Rocky, they haven't exactly found a way to connect all the hangout stuff to the hero's journey stuff. Like his girlfriend is ultimately maybe a little bit incidental plot wise, but
That's how I felt watching Creed 1.
But you do realize that these movies actually are hangout movies, and Creed gets that. Like, you actually just want to, especially in this, like Creed 2, it's not a great movie, but it's just like, yay, we're in his mansion hanging out with our friends again, and she's working on her music career, and it works. But it doesn't have the kind of power that, like, the Rocky has, and the way it's able to somehow connect those two things without any obvious connective tissue. Let's talk about Gazzo real quick. I do not like the fact that Gazzo turns out to be such a softie. I do think that that's just a little bit
too much.
Well, it just ruins the Cinderella of it all for me. It'd be like, it doesn't ruin it, but it dampens it a little bit. Like if the evil stepmother said, I know you're trying to escape from me and find your prince, but here's $500, go buy a dress for the ball. Like it kind of feels like, yeah, it's sweet that it's kind of sweet and it's kind of quirky and it's kind of fun and it's kind of not doing the cliche, but maybe we just needed the cliche. Maybe this guy just needed to be the bad guy that we needed to. I am glad there wasn't, like you were dreading, Ben, a big subplot about. I'm glad it just.
I've got money riding on this, and I need you to.
Yeah, I need you to throw it, Rock.
Yeah.
That would have been boring.
But that doesn't even play because Rocky can't throw a fight that
the outcome is already known.
Everybody knows Rocky's going to lose, and he'll be lucky to go 3 rounds against Apollo Creed. There's no throwing it.
Right.
The only thing that he can do is go down on the first punch or something like that. I'm not going to do it.
The other thing is, I'm sorry, Gazzo just doesn't exist. Like that's, it's just, that guy wouldn't be that nice. Like the story does not resolve itself that way. It is fairy tale. Save the fairy tale for the very end of the movie. Don't front load too much fairy tale, especially when you've done such a good job of world building an actual plausible, gritty Philadelphia. Like, I don't need it to be slimy. I don't need there to be F-bombs. I don't need there to be actual prostitutes. But I don't know. Gazzo's a bridge too far for me. A small bridge too far.
I don't have too much trouble. I just imagine a Marlon Brando, Godfather era type guy. And I imagine that all we're seeing is this one little corner where he has a soft spot for this loser named Rocky.
Who's Italian like him.
And there's plenty of other people in his life.
That's the part for me that I give it a pass on.
Okay,
we're Italian. Yeah. We're all Italians here. We're all family. And so I can... Somebody else.
So I just needed a scene of Gazzo taking some pliers to an Irishman, and I would have loved that.
Yeah, that's how I imagine it.
That's how I imagine it too.
It's just like he's plenty nasty to other people. Just find the right person, find the right time. You'll get it. You get the evil Gazzo. But
Gazzo's a godfather to this. He's a slumlord to this like ultra ratty. Like he's a sub godfather to whatever. But he takes it on himself to take care of.
He's got some civic pride, some community spirit.
He's got some, and especially that Italian stuff, right? Like, so Rocky, I give you a job. I expect you to break a guy's thumbs,
right?
But I'm going to take care of you, Rock, because you're the orphan Italian dummy who can't get any other kind of work anyway. And I'm a good guy. I take care of my people.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's just like, okay, Rocky just ruined your entire business model. If I can expect to borrow and not get my thumbs broken, then not only do you lose your business, you're dead. The other gangs will come for you. Like, if you know anything about this stuff, like, no. Rocky's own thumbs are getting broken. Like, Gazzo doesn't get to be Gazzo if he's this unruthless. So, 0 stars. Horrible movie.
Funny.
All right, we need to at least talk. Well, we still got to talk about Polly, but where do we go next? Let's talk about Mickey. So here's my thing. I said I had a problem with Mickey. My problem with Mickey is maybe a personal problem. I just can't get past the parodies and Mickey is a little bit like we said with Quint and Jaws. I love Quint and Jaws, but Quint and Jaws does just feel like he steps out of an entire other movie. Just like, hey, I'm a movie character over here. And Mickey is just such a movie character played by an actor in a movie. And Stallone has great charisma and everything, but he still feels like he's like in this
guy.
With Mickey, it's like, here's a great actor playing a character. Stallone just is Rocky. Everybody else just is what they are. But this is like a performance. Like, it's designed to win an Academy Award. And Burgess Meredith knocks it out of the park, and everybody loves the character. And maybe I just can't see past the parodies. And I think the problem might be with me, and with it actually might be where, for me at least, culture has sort of caught up with this movie and made swallowed it.
Huh.
But yeah, I just can't stand Mickey. Like, he doesn't work for me.
Stand Mickey.
It's not that I can't stand him. I check out. This part of the movie doesn't. We're gonna have crap lightning. It's like, oh, he's saying the movie line that a movie character would say.
Eat lightning and crap thunder. Get the line right.
Yeah. I mean, I know everybody loves Mickey. I guess that's my hot take for the episode. Everybody loves Mickey, right? You guys probably love Mickey.
Yeah, you can't not love Mickey. Sorry.
I like Mickey Mouse.
I like Mickey. I mean,
Nick's awesome.
To me, I guess I read him in Rocky terms. So I was like, I just read him naturalistically somehow. Here's this guy, stiff, angry old man who has his own. The reason he acts like he's acting in a movie
because
his
character would do.
because he's self-mythologized. He's like, I'm this great guy. I just never had the right chance. And so for me,
he's got to be the kind of guy who can actually run a gym that's full of people who think that they've got a shot making it in the boxing world. So he's got to sell himself to all of these people as their trainer and as
even though he's clearly a
loser,
loser,
the place to go. Like, so he has to be an actor. Like, if you think of just in terms of who in the world is going to run the corner gym that is actually going to convince people to come and train there. Like, you got to get these like ghetto white trash Italians and Irishmen and black guys all together in the same place, jumping rope and hitting heavy bags and hitting speed bags and jumping up and sparring with each other. Like, who can...
Yeah, you got to be larger than life.
You have to be larger than life to inspire that kind of commitment from people and get them to come to you to train them and to your people to train them. So that to me is just always sort of worked.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think that logic makes total sense. The character as performed just doesn't work for me very well. I think it always has.
Maybe if he wasn't such a little guy.
Yeah.
Maybe if he looked like he would inspire a boxer.
Right.
I feel like he's just angry enough to make it work.
I mean, I wouldn't have minded him if he was in The Quiet Man. You know what I mean? Like, if everybody was kind of pitched at his level, it's fine. I don't think Burgess Meredith's doing anything wrong. It just
feel
feels
like
discordant to me.
In every neighborhood, there's like loud, angry guys who control the room. Even in nothing neighborhoods, it doesn't. So he just felt like, oh, he's that guy. He's the guy in the gym.
I like him in the script, and I think I like Burgess Meredith in general.
But something doesn't work for you.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I'm sure I could think of other examples of like
maybe seeing Rocky 2 will change your mind. Maybe it will cement this opinion.
I hope we'll have to do a Rocky 2 check-in.
Yeah,
we have to.
Okay, let's.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
So we still need to talk about Apollo and Paulie. Let's talk about Apollo. Now, he got pretty well criticized at the time as a racist caricature. I have a quote here from Muhammad Ali himself. So Muhammad Ali, there's a really wonderful article I encourage everyone to look up where Roger Ebert went to see Rocky 2 while it was playing with Muhammad Ali, and so you have Muhammad Ali just talking through the whole movie.
Wow.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Send that to me, please.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, likewise.
So it's got all these quotes and stuff. Let me just find. It's got like all his commentary. Yeah, when Adrian says, "There's one thing I want you to do for me," when Ali mutters to himself, "Yeah, beat that N-word's ass." So you've got all his commentary on the boxer. The worst thing a boxer can do, it tightens the muscles. A fighter never lifts weights, but it always looks good in a movie. So anyway, here's the thing he has to say overall. For the black man to come out superior, Ali said, would be against America's teachings. I have been so great in boxing, they had to create an image like Rocky, a white image on the screen, to counteract my image in the ring. America has to have its white images no matter where it gets them. Jesus, Wonder Woman, Tarzan, and Rocky.
Wow.
Wow, yeah.
Well,
I could see how... And he's actually very gracious, and he likes the movie. But I could see how he would be personally offended by this portrayal as Apollo Creed.
Absolutely. And by the whole story of the little
Scrappy white guy.
small, scrappy, dopey white guy who can take him down.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, where is that guy in real life?
His name's Chuck Wepner, and he couldn't.
Yeah, his name's Chuck Wepner, and he couldn't, and nobody else could either.
Right. And yeah, I mean, I could see the criticism. The idea that, yeah, you've all vicariously, as white America has really enjoyed me as their athlete, but now the most popular movie series in the world is
a fantasy fanfic of destroying me in the ring.
A white guy destroying me in the ring.
Yeah, I totally feel that.
Makes sense.
And that was a criticism, not just of his, but of the intelligentsia. The chattering class had that problem with Rocky. Like, hey,
I think it's a legitimate problem.
we've got a legit black guy that's like the king of the world right now in this field, and we're going to make a fantasy about
Taking him down.
a white guy taking him down, and him being sort of callow enough to set the trap for himself. I don't know what that does to. I know Creed becomes an important ally in later movies, and obviously has a movie series now about his son. And
well, they're going to fight again, and Creed's going to beat the crap out of Rocky, and it's his pride that's going to take him down at the end of that fight. And then Apollo's going to retire and train Rocky.
Yeah.
In a 3, and he's going to come out of retirement to do a little exhibition with the dopey Russian. And just like he did with Rocky, he's not going to take the fight seriously enough, and the Russian's going to kill him. Rocky's going to have to go with it.
Right. And then his son's going to have a bunch of adventures all by himself.
With a big chip on his shoulder that reprocesses and retreads all of it and deals with some of the problems of it and puts Michael B. Jordan across from Stallone himself in a way that I think it's been a while since I've seen it, but I think
it's really smart.
It's really smart. I think Ryan Coogler's kind of a genius at this sort of thing.
And he managed to do it all without making us feel bad towards the original Rocky or towards Stallone.
Right, which is really sweet.
Or towards Carl Weathers. There's a way of casting him as the Uncle Tom of the whole.
Yeah, and it doesn't sell out anybody. It gives it all back to you, but it's definitely in conversation with all those themes, and it's pretty smartly done, if I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I just think Coogler's a genius, and Michael B. Jordan's excellent casting for that kind of a role. And we'll see where it goes from. I basically handed it all over to Jordan for the third one, right?
Yeah.
Like written, directed, and performed by Jordan, I think.
Yep. I think that's all true. And
so we'll see where he takes it.
Well, what do we think about Apollo Creed in this movie? I mean, I think I do agree with you that it actually is unfortunate that he's not fleshed out a little bit more or made to be something
more than Rocky's foil,
more than just the Muhammad Ali for us to.
Well, but the one thing that they were always sure to make Creed is much smarter and savvier,
self-aware
than Rocky. He's a businessman,
right?
He's not just the fighter. He's an entertainer. He's a businessman. He's calculating. And so they'd give him some upper hand that, I don't know, I think is accurate when it comes to Ali. Like, I think that the idea is there's actually a pretty calculating persona behind Muhammad Ali's what you see on TV, and that's part of what they tried to do. And I don't think they were wrong about that. Well, I think Carl Weathers is not the world's best actor.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's part of it.
Somebody could bring a little bit more to the part. I like Carl Weathers just fine.
He's fun.
Well, and he's
a broad, fun performer.
He's a really fun Apollo Creed, and he's got fantastic physique, and he pulls a lot of it off really well. He's athletic. He moves well. He definitely hams it up in a really fun way.
Well, and insofar as he is that sort of corporate sellout type, we do recognize that type. Michael Jordan was that guy. Everybody buys Nike.
Yep.
Republicans buy Nike too. What's the thing? The stars of today we could name that have that same sort of dynamic going. Kobe, whoever. So it's a type. I mean, I'm glad that they sketched him in a little bit more in the movies. I'm glad this isn't all we've got. Paulie! You guys think Paulie's a success of a character?
He's a success of a character.
Yeah.
He's success. They try to make him more lovable in the follow-ups where he's just the lovable brother-in-law.
With the robot butler or whatever.
The robot does come in number 3.
Paulie gets a robot for his birthday or something.
But
we're out of ideas.
Yeah. But
yeah, it's a little surprising to go back to this movie in view of the franchise and see how much of it kind of it almost is the closest thing this film has to a villain.
He's a real grifting jerk.
Yeah.
It does feel maybe a little weird to me that his storyline just kind of doesn't go anywhere. It's one of the things that maybe doesn't quite connect between the archetypalness of it all, the primal story that we're doing, and then the hangout movie of it all. Like, Polly's story feels like it's going to have to me at least, it feels like it's going to have a conclusion. And then the conclusion is, well, Adrian moved out and
he made a little bit of money off Rock in the process.
Yeah, and he backed off. You feel like there's some kind of, not like a fight or anything, but some confrontation, something to put a pin on in that relationship. And there wasn't quite, I don't know, that trips me. I don't know whether that's a flaw or not, but I do trip over it when I watch the movie.
Yeah, that's interesting. To me, it just adds to the naturalism.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this guy's just stuck.
Not every story has yeah.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah, like he's a foil to Rocky in that way. Like, here's the guy that had no belief in himself, no sense of persistence, and isn't going to get anywhere. Like, he's the opposite. He's just bitter and stuck. That's the end of the story of Polly.
I don't know.
I think that's pretty much all I've got. I mean, anything you guys want to say about the final fight? The training montage. This movie created it's not the first movie with a montage, certainly, or with a training montage of this type. Created a certain kind of, we're going to see the guy eating the eggs, and then we're going to see the guy jogging. And I love apparently all that was filmed guerrilla style. Like, they didn't get permits for any of that. Like, it's all just run and gun, go downtown to Philadelphia. And so there's all kinds of little things they got. The guy that tosses Rocky an orange didn't know he was in the movie. He just saw some weirdo jogging by again and again and tossed him an orange. And the people that are kind of like, who is this Rocky guy, that watch him, the thing that they extend into a whole thing in the second movie, apparently, in the scene that we've all seen, that was all just natural. Like, huh? There's some people with a camera and some guy jogging by who's not a big star that we don't know. They're all just, you're seeing people behave naturally. And you've got so much, like, beautiful time capsule, the ships and the bridge and the...
Yep.
Yeah,
it's
really
great.
Cool, really fun.
And then you have the fight. The choreographers were so mad at the lack of budget and professionalism that they quit. So Stallone simply scripted the fight. 32 pages of Rocky punches. Rocky does a left, and then Apollo does a block. And then he just scripted it all out.
Wow.
That's
Seriously?
amazing.
He and, what's his face, Carl Weathers, learned the complete rounds 1, 2, 14, and 15. And then they shot them, as I said, once with the camera in the ring, once with the camera out of the ring. And that's how they did that, which is pretty cool.
Insane.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So you may not, it's, as Muhammad Ali points out multiple times in his thing with Ebert, none of these guys would last a second in the ring, but you are watching real athleticism and real training pay off, and it's cool.
It is cool. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's all character beats, like we said earlier.
Yeah. There's a lot of people for whom this fight might be a little anticlimactic just because it's not as dynamic or over the top or whatever, or as you've been taught to expect from a billion movies since downstream of it. I don't personally feel that way, but I think I'm probably guessing accurately there. Rocky.
I don't feel it's anticlimactic. I didn't feel that.
No, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's only slightly anticlimactic in that he knows what he's going to do. He says what he's going to do, and then he does it. And we're glad that he does it. But there's no surprise to be had. I mean, I know it's a phony baloney surprise when the character's, oh no, he's getting the snot beat out of him. He's on the rope. And then he comes back, and we all know that's going to happen. But there is some kind of built-in pleasure to that sort of thing. Whereas this, it doesn't seriously feel like his plan's in jeopardy. He falls down. He has to get back up. He has to cut the eye. There's drama to it. I mean, it's a great scene. I'm not really criticizing. I'm just describing.
Yeah, kind of. It's in that sense, it fits the rest of the movie. It's a little...
It just feels more naturalistic.
Lower key.
Yeah, a little lower key than what you might expect from the greatest sports movie of all time. Is this the greatest sports movie of all time? I guess that's a good question to close with.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I've never seen Raging Bull. That's what...
Oh, I've seen
I've
seen Raging Bull.
Raging Bull, I wouldn't consider it to be a sports movie. I mean,
I despise it.
I don't despise it. I think it's amazing, but it's not a sports movie. It doesn't belong to that genre. It's a character study of a real deadbeat.
I think that boxing movies do have a leg up because of how
stripped of everything.
Yeah, how simple, how sort of typological they can be. I think that there's a really good case that Rocky really is. I can say, well...
Here, I'm just going to read you Vulture's list of 50, and we'll see if anything... So, The Natural, The Way Back, Without Limits, Personal Best, Bang the Drum Slowly, Goon, Senna, King Richard, I, Tonya, The Longest Yard, The Boxer, White Men Can't Jump, Major League, Dodgeball, Talladega Nights, Rudy. We forgot about Rudy. Sorry, Rocky. Samwise Gamgee got his 3 minutes. What a stupid movie. Bend It Like Beckham. I'm sure Rudy's wonderful. The Karate Kid. 8 Men Out. The Fighter. I like that one. Happy Gilmore. The Color of Money. Creed. The Bad News Bears. Sugar. Rush. Tin Cup. Caddyshack. Hoosiers is...
Okay, Hoosiers actually may be worth talking about.
All right, so put a pin in Hoosiers. Moneyball, I like a lot, but that's not... Miracle, Chariots of Fire. We're in top 15 now. He Got Game, Murder Ball, When We Were Kings, Field of Dreams, Breaking Away. Field of Dreams and Breaking Away, maybe we could put pins in. $1 Million Baby, Slapshot, League of Their Own, Ollie the Wrestler, Pride of the Yankees, Foxcatcher, Bull Durham.
Is Foxcatcher the one with...
Channing Tatum, Steve Carell.
Steve Carell, yeah.
About wrestling?
Yeah, I've never actually watched that.
I've seen it.
But I've wanted to watch it multiple times and just haven't done it.
It's a pretty tense and uncomfortable movie. I mean, I would not call it a sports movie.
So they actually have Rocky at number 3 on this list, and then they have Raging Bull, which I don't think... And then they have Hoop Dreams, which is a documentary. So I think Raging Bull, say what you want about it, it's not really doing the same thing. It's not a movie about...
So the argument... So I don't care about any of the other movies on this list being in this conversation except for Hoosiers. And okay, Breaking Away is a good movie. What's the other one you wanted to put a pin in? Field of Dreams or something?
Breaking Away and Field of Dreams.
Here, let me... I just made a list of the things that I think we have to at least reject. Field of Dreams, Breaking Away, Chariots of Fire, and Rocky. And Hoosiers, sorry.
Okay, so I think that there's nothing about any of those other movies that Rocky doesn't do better, except that what Hoosiers does is it tells a father story and a team story. And it's, as far as a sportsman, I mean, Field of Dreams is a bizarre
supernatural
fantasy dad movie.
Not really a big game movie.
Yeah.
Maybe what we're really talking about is the genre of the big game movie. So take out Field of Dreams, that just leaves Breaking Away, Chariot of Fire, Hoosiers, Rocky.
Okay, so those movies, so Chariots of Fire and Breaking Away, I actually think they all accomplish the same sorts of things, and I think that Rocky does it better. Maybe somebody is going to argue that Chariots of Fire is just too much of a classic, and
it feels like such a different movie.
But I think that there's that movie, and then there's Hoosiers, which is probably the representative father figure, team, discipline, put everybody in check, rally the troops kind of a movie. And I don't know, maybe we should just watch it sometime.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to do Hoosiers. We'll probably have to do all 4 of these.
Yeah.
I mean, Breaking Away is fine. I think it's a quirky, fun little character drama thing.
It's not even close. It's not in the same ballpark.
Yeah, and
just very sweet and likable.
It's sweet. I love Breaking Away. It's just not.
No, it's not the same.
It's not the same. I think Chariots of Fire is worth considering. Chariots of Fire is very historical. It's maybe a little bit homeworky, but it's a great movie. I mean, I love Chariots of Fire, and those guys are amazing, and it's an interesting story, and the religious angle is interesting too. If I was in the right mood, I might try and fight for Chariots of Fire. But for me, it's easy. I think Rocky is the winner.
Yeah.
Maybe as someone who doesn't care that much about sports, boxing is just more fun to get into the sort of typology of than basketball. Like, I don't even know what I'm watching. Even with fake basketball, I don't know what I'm watching half the time. Like, okay, I mean, I do. Like, they're throwing a ball, trying to get through a hoop, but it's like not nearly as... doesn't have the power and potency of boxing. There are a couple places you could grow up where Hoosiers just might have to rank higher for you culturally. Indiana is one of them, right?
That you're from here, so. But
there's something so small town about Hoosiers, which is delightful. It's not something that I relate to. That I didn't grow up in that part of Indiana. Like, I didn't actually grow up in the Hoosiers-y feeling. To me, Bloomington is a university town. It just doesn't have the same feeling. At least that's not how I remember my childhood. I don't know. I just think Rocky's better. Like, I like Hoosiers. I like fatherhood movies, which is what Hoosiers is, and that's what gives it the edge, maybe, or at least puts it in the discussion of getting the edge. But
it's not nearly as well crafted of a movie.
I just don't like.
That's my memory.
Gene Hackman's romance is pretty lame, as I recall. I mean, it's fine, but it doesn't.
Dennis Hopper is fun, but who cares? I mean, okay, that's not true. It's a good movie.
It's a great movie. It's just...
No, Rocky's in a class of its own, though.
These guys, I guess it's like, it's just the inherent drama of it. Like if Rocky, yeah, we could say it's about self-respect and all that, but also this guy stands a real chance at escaping one kind of bad life into a better, like Rocky really has something to gain or lose. And so do the Hoosiers kids, but also it's a bunch of white boys in Indiana. They're going to be fine. They can go do something else. Like it does not have the inherent like mythological weight of Rocky. Like if they lose, it will suck, but it won't ruin their lives.
It's another based on a true story.
Right.
Although nothing about about Norman Dale is based on a true story.
I saw a movie with Kevin Costner as a running coach. It was a Disney movie based on a true story, coaching these Hispanic kids in California.
People love that movie. I've had so many people say, "Hey, have you caught up with this?" And I'm like, "No, why would I watch that?" And they're like, "It's great."
My wife wanted to watch it.
I've
I
seen
was
Cool
like,
Runnings.
"Oh, I hate Cool Runnings."
I hate
But
Cool
this
Runnings.
movie, I liked a lot. I liked a lot. The Kevin Costner movie. I mean, you could say it's nothing special. It's big cheesy melodrama, but man, Kevin Costner brings truly great dad energy.
Can we just take a minute though to talk
And-
about the fact that Cool Runnings sucks? And everybody
what a
likes
terrible movie. Why did I even watch that as a
It's
kid?
just a 90s experience.
yeah, like,
Yeah, I know.
All these
but it's so
freaking
bad.
millennials are like, I have a fond memory of this thing. We should watch Cool Runnings. And the
The
new,
great Disney director,
it's
John Turtletop, responsible for so many popular and bad movies.
the national,
It's incredible.
Guy,
National treasure, yes.
Midas in reverse. You can take a great idea and turn it into lead, assuming lead's not valuable. in
He's
this
made so many
metaphor.
bad and popular movies. It's incredible.
Yeah.
He keeps making them.
Oh, we're from Jamaica, man. We are.
I think you mean Mon.
Mon, yeah, we do funny things unexpected by corporate white people. Ha 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 ha. And then you read the real story, and it's like their Bob's sled went an inch, and nothing inspirational happened. And Cool Runnings, more like Fool Runnings, Cool Gunnings. I don't know. There's nothing there. Is there anything
No,
there?
I don't think so.
Yeah, Cool Runnings sucks. Sorry. I know that might be the second most controversial opinion on this podcast after Dune.
Probably.
Rocky. Ben, how many boxing gloves?
Turtles?
Yeah, how many turtles out of 15 for the 15 rounds?
15.
15 turtles for
Yeah.
Rocky. Jake, same question.
15.
I will do. I was gonna, you know what? I'll give 15 turtles. I was going to try and be funny or dock it at some turtles just to be controversial, but it's Rocky. What are you going to do? He's Rocky. He's a great guy. Try to get that girl not to be a lady of the night. He's a nice guy. He's got turtles. We all like Rocky. He says, "Yo, Adrian." Remember the part where he says, "Yo, Adrian"?
I remember that.
Yeah. So you got to love Rocky. He's a 15 turtle guy. He's actually a 2 turtle guy, but if turtles are indicating his quality level, then he's a 15 turtle guy. I'm glad we talked about this. We'll have to check. I don't know if we're going to do like a whole episode on Rocky 2. I imagine we'd end up repeating a bunch of stuff and saying the making of this movie was way less interesting. I guess Ben could do his pugilism history all over again. But yeah, Rocky. All right. We're done. Go to patreon.com/Sanity at the Movies. Be part of the podcast. Until next time.
I don't know.
I can think of one line you can say.
Yo, Adrian.
Yay.